I know. All right, thank you, everyone. I would like to call to order tonight's meeting of the Milton Select Board here Tuesday, August 4th, 2026, 7 p.m. in the Dunphy Conference Room at our fire headquarters. I invite you all to stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We'll now open public comment. All right, we will now open the floor for public comment. Public comment will have a total of 21 allotted minutes. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, and I will keep the time here. I will invite Ms. Deborah Felton to join us.
Thank you. Good evening. Deborah Felton, Precinct 2 Town Meeting Member, Willoughby Road. I'm here to speak about short-term rentals and the need to get this regulation or bylaw on the books now, and not have it pushed down the road. I've been concerned that short-term rentals have a negative impact on our housing stock. Just in a 2-block area in my neighborhood, there are two families, and they're all short-term rentals. That's 4 units that people could be living in. I did a lot of research. I gave it over to the planning board. The town's attorney, Carolyn Murray, she drafted a clear bylaw, and I think it is ready to go now. Regulating short-term rentals is something that residents are asking you to do and asking the town. I really don't want to see this pushed down the road. The building inspector has the tools to inspect short-term rentals, and he can pull in the health department on a case-by-case basis, and that's what many towns do. I know that when I first started researching this, I reached out to some of the neighbors in East Milton, spoke to John Cohane, he gave me permission to use his name at the planning board. He was very happy that something was going to be done about regulating short-term rentals. So I ask you to move this along and not wait until the spring. Thank you.
All right, I do see a hand raised online. Mr. Corey, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Dear Select Board Chair and members, good evening. Corey, I reside at 1452 Canton Avenue, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak during public comment. I'd like to request that the Select Board notify the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, MassDOT, about our concerns regarding the Randolph Avenue road diet and its impact on Canton Avenue. As you may recall, MassDOT testified on May 26th, which is 10 weeks ago, that the road diet had adverse effects on Canton Avenue, leading to increased traffic volumes. In fact, some of the vehicles on Canton Avenue are traveling at speeds exceeding 60 miles an hour, and some are approaching 80 miles an hour. I understand that the town administrator has been working closely with MassDOT to address these issues. However, I believe it would be beneficial for the Select Board to invite MassDOT to attend the next Select Board meeting. This would allow us as residents to receive an update on the progress of the situation and gain insights into their proposed solutions. In collaboration with my neighbors, I have compiled a report outlining feasible solutions to address the traffic and speeding concerns on Upper Canton Avenue. We believe that working together, we can implement badly needed traffic calming measures to enhance the safety of our neighborhood. I await your discussion on this matter during the public comment response, and I appreciate your attention to this significant issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one in person and no hands raised online, I will now close public comment. We will respond later in our agenda. With that closed, we'll move to item 4, discussion update approval of the proposed local historic district for Milton Village, an Article 4 Fall Town Meeting. The historic district did speak about this last meeting. I invited Mr. J.D. Wild and a couple other developers in town to join us to hear from some of our business community about the article. And so, Mr. Wild, you can join us here. Gentlemen, if you want to join as well, you can just pull up the seat if you'd like.
I made a few notes, so if you don't mind, I'm going to read from a few of my notes just so I make sure I cover all my bases here. Good evening, members of the board. My name is J.D. Wild, and I own property in Milton Village. I'm also a local business owner. I own and operate Muscle and Flow, which is a business down in the village. I'm also a resident of Milton Hill. I live right up the street. So the local historic district bylaw disproportionately in a lot of ways affects me, which is part of the reason why I've been very vocal in encouraging more community engagement. I care about this neighborhood's character as much as anyone in this room. I have such a direct long-term stake in what happens there that I think it's important that we have an honest conversation about the implications of putting together a local historic district. With me tonight, I have 2 additional property owners behind me, Kyle Harnish and Bob Falcone. On the call, I did reach out to a handful of the other property owners that I talked to. I do not know if they are on the Zoom call because it is August, they were unable to attend. But I do have 2 property owners on High Street, an additional property owner at 5064 Adams Street, and then I have several business owners that have expressed concerns as well and said they'd be happy to provide letters expressing their concerns, if that's so chosen by the board. I also want to acknowledge before I raise any concerns, I've had the chance to look at the updated draft in tonight's packet, and I do appreciate that town council has cleaned up a number of issues from an earlier version that I had seen. My concern tonight isn't with historic preservation as a value. It's about whether this specific bylaw in its current form is ready to go before town meeting and whether it reflects genuine broad-based consensus among the people it will govern. What I'm going to do first, if you don't mind, is I'd like to present my kind of high-level macro concerns, and then I will jump into some of the specific bylaw provisions that I have concerns about. Number 1 is that the process has not matched the scale of the ask. So a local historic district, as many of you know, is not a minor overlay. It requires a majority vote at town meeting and the Attorney General approval. It's one of the highest procedural bars in Massachusetts municipal law, reserved specifically for changes that lasting legal and binding effects on private property rights. Community discussion and outreach to gauge resident and property owner interest is laid out in the state guidelines as the first step in a properly sequenced process before study committee is even appointed. One of the questions I have is that, did that outreach occur? Or at a minimum, did that reach the 30 affected property owners prior to establishing the local historic district in Milton Village? Or has that engagement mainly been concentrated among a subset of residents who are interested in adding the local historic district? A proposal this consequential deserves a level of demonstrated buy-in proportional to its 2/3 threshold, not just committee consensus. Number 2, and this is a macro concept I think going across the town, I think this local historic proposes a divisiveness risk. Historic districts regulate private property in ways that ordinary zoning does not. They require prior government approval, in this form it's called a certificate, before an owner can alter their property. When that level of control is imposed on 30 specific properties by a town meeting vote, it invites a lasting sense of done to us, not with us, among the very owners most affected. This dynamic tends to persist well past the vote, surfacing in every future certificate application, every future commission election, every future dispute over what appropriate means. I think it's fair for this board to ask whether the current process has done enough to convert affected owners into stakeholders rather than subjects. A district that a majority of its own property owners feel was imposed on them starts its life with a legitimacy deficit that no amount of design guidance can fix later. Number 3 is that it's a deterrent to investment and revitalization. Milton Village is explicitly described elsewhere in town planning materials as an area targeted for mixed-use revitalization. Layering a second potentially conflicting regulatory regime on top of that, one that requires commission review before any building permit touching exterior features can issue, creates real uncertainty for owners considering investment. Just for context, as I'm sure most of you are aware, no building permit for construction or exterior alteration and no demolition permit may be issued anywhere in the district until a certificate has been granted. This is a categorical precondition on private capital improvement, not a narrow historic preservation carve-out. Even under the bylaw's own deadlines, that's a potential 60-plus day gate before a building permit can even be sought. real friction for small commercial and mixed-use projects in the area of town that separately targeted for revitalization through the Milton Village PUD zoning district. The memo's own practical considerations issued by the state section flagged the town's, the memo's own practical considerations section flags the town's existing Milton's PUD zoning as design guidelines that need to be considered and reviewed for consistency within the proposed LHD guidelines. As far as I'm concerned, that review has not happened yet. I still see the comments in the existing bylaw, and asking town meeting to vote before that conflict is resolved risk creating two regulatory regimes actively working against each other in the same 30 parcel footprint. Number 4 is a lack of demonstrated community support. The study committee was appointed, I believe, in 2021. Don't quote me on that. It has issued its recommendation, I believe, in 2023 based on my research. A multi-year process driven by a committee culminating in a report. Nothing in the memo describes a resident or property owner referendum, survey, or vote specific to the affected parcels. I have had conversations with members of the committee before about a survey that went out. I, as a property owner, did not get that survey. So although one may have gone out, I don't think it was ever actually sent to the specific property owners. It's fair and reasonable to ask, what is the actual documented level of support among the affected owners, as opposed to the level of support among the study committee and the preservation community generally? These are not the same constituency, and the 2/3 town meeting threshold exists precisely because binding property rights changes should not rest on the enthusiasm of a subset. And then there's still some open legal questions that I'm not entirely clear on in the existing bylaw. One of which, the new draft, showed a quorum and versus a threshold mismatch. So the revised draft that I read prior to coming in here, that I think was part of the select board's package, sets a quorum as a simple majority of those appointed, which I believe would be commission members potentially as few as 3, while a certificate approval clause still contains an unresolved marginal vote. And it's unclear if there's a scenario where a 2-to-1 vote would deny a project. There was also some language in there in a prior version that was regarding the setbacks, and I saw that that was removed. As far as I'm aware, I think that's really important. I don't think it's appropriate to have non-zoning departments weighing in on zoning matters. So I'm happy to see that removed. I'm just gonna fly through some of my micro concerns. One is the scope of permit trigger is unchanged, and it's essentially a blanket. Every building and demolition permit that touches an exterior feature is gated by a certificate, regardless of scale. The concern there is that it's hard to, as a property owner, to invest in property when you do not know if the fruits of your effort in collecting budget, scopes, hiring an architect is gonna get approved. And unfortunately, the way these work out is you actually can't get before the local historic district until you've spent money. And this group of future appointed individuals on this board, we don't know who they are. We don't know what their design guidelines are. It very likely could be a board that technically overrides the planning board and the zoning board. So I would ask that if this doesn't go before a vote and the committee is willing to go back to the table and engage the business community, we have a conversation about routine like-for-like replacements, and if those should qualify as non-applicable, maybe try to make some of these smaller improvements that we can encourage property owners down there to invest in their properties and fast-track those versus some of the larger projects that might require a little bit more diligence. I saw that signage was removed. I'm happy to see that was removed. To make this board aware, there's a new sign bylaw in town. We recently went through it with the approval of 2 Pence Market down at 2 LA Street. And it does create a much longer process for business owners. Many signs in town are pre-existing non-conforming. So by changing the business, changing the shape, you essentially trigger a non-conforming sign that requires zoning board relief, which I'm sure is all you can imagine when you go to open a business, waiting 4 to 6 months to have a ZBA approval and a building permit from the building department to hang a sign is a huge deterrent, especially for some of these smaller spaces that we have in the village that require pretty light turnover. And then, I think probably before I jump into my closing statement and happy to answer any questions, I think we should really have a conversation about, is this the right fit for the village? Because I don't see a scenario where we can have the design guidelines in place before we vote as a town on this. And one of the concerns is, we would have to adopt the commission's authority before its guidelines even exist, which means that owners are being asked to accept binding review under criteria to be determined later by a body not yet seated. I'm sure all of you who have residential properties in this town would probably feel uncomfortable with a group of individuals that you do not know who they're gonna be, and design guidelines that you do not know what they are, getting to show up and tell you what to do with your own property when you wanna replace the roof, replace the shutters, replace your deck. So I hope that same courtesy gets extended to us, just because we're business owners and property owners. I don't think we should be treated any differently. Lastly, I want to recognize that this draft is meaningfully improved from the version I've reviewed previously, by no means am I asking the board to dismiss the study committee's work. Myself and Larry have spent a lot of time going back and forth, and I know that they are volunteer positions and they're doing this from good faith or heart. I'm just asking that before this goes to a town meeting for a vote, the board require a few things. One is a finalized, internally consistent bylaw with no placeholder language or contradictory provisions, so town meeting can vote on something that they can look at in advance and not show up day of. Two is documented outreach and a clearer read on support specifically among the affected property owners, not just the preservation community. And three, resolution of the acknowledged conflict with the Milton Village existing zoning design guidelines before, not after adoption. That's not opposition, that's preservation, and it's due diligence on a proposal that will bind roughly 30 of my neighbors and my own properties for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of information. I will leave it, I will open it up to the board for any questions or comments.
Do you have a copy of your testimony? Can you get a copy?
Yeah,
of it?
sure,
Is it submitted to
sure.
you? Yeah.
Sure.
I can leave this here.
You can, or email it, either
Or I
one.
can email it.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. I think it's really helpful to understand from the business owner perspective where things potentially are in conflict, right? I think our goal is to make sure that there is a robust process that is able to streamline things for business owners, right? We want business owners to be successful in Milton, and we don't wanna have a lot of barriers, I think, in the way, while, maintaining, the character of the community, so thank you for sharing.
And if you don't mind, I recently helped open Two Pence Market. That's an example of the work that I'd like to see furthered in the village. I think we can achieve that outcome with collaboration. I don't think it needs to be a divisive, over-regulated, board-heavy approach. I often stick my neck out there and come to these public meetings, present all the information myself. My cell phone is always on, the building department, town administrator, anybody can call me at any given time. I look forward to collaborating with the boards in this town and producing a village that families and kids can ride their bikes to and are more foot traffic friendly and less of a pass through where it's hard to cross the street because the cars are flying so fast.
Yeah, Mr. Wild, I wanna thank you for what you're doing down there. Got a couple of great properties. You're probably the majority owner of the most down there, right now?
Yes, sir. Yep.
So I appreciate you coming in and explaining a lot of this for us. And sometimes too much government's not good.
Mm.
And I'm very appreciative of what you've done down there, and I hope we all try to help you out and make it a lot easier moving forward. 'Cause,
Thank you.
I'd like to see the rest of your properties develop like that, Mark.
I agree, thank you.
Thank you.
One of the difficult things is that even if, we don't know what the design guidelines are yet, we don't know who the individuals are who are gonna sit on the future board, but one of the problems is that even if we get the most business-friendly, forward-thinking individuals on that board, we're still out of the gate adding 60 days to a permit timeline. Practically speaking, this is kinda how it looks. If you wanted to do a project like Two Pence Market, you would actually start, I know there's been some confusion about where this would come into the process and the timeline. You would never go to the local historic district at the end of the project, because the way it's read now is that they have unilateral binding authority to deny a building permit or not issue a certificate which would deny it. So there's a hypothetical scenario where you could go present to the planning board, have spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars, a ton of time, get an approval, go to the local historic district, and for whatever reason, somebody doesn't like your project, get everybody to decide no on it, and then all of a sudden your project is stuck and it can't move forward. So now we've got an elected group of individuals at the planning board whose authority should be more heavily weighted than an unelected, appointed group of individuals, but it's not. This is unilateral authority. So the zoning board could say yes, the planning board could say yes, and then you would show up to the local historic district. So the way you would practically handle that in real life is you would actually go to the local historic district on the front end, because we'd never put all that capital and all that time at risk to then have no leverage in that final conversation. When you're talking about design and stuff that, if there is a substantive change that comes from those local historic conversations, you're gonna have to go back to the planning board, you're gonna have to go back to the zoning board and modify your application, your plans to adjust for the things that have been asked. So it becomes a parallel approval process. That's generally how it works, is you try to get in front of all the boards informally early on, get that feedback loop, but it's just one more barrier to entry. It's certainly an additional cost. It's adding a ton of time for small businesses to open that wanna do a paint or a window replacement. So even if it turns out in the best possible way, it's still gonna make it harder to open a business and be a property owner down in the village.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a hand raised online. Charles Hajar, I think he's one of the business owners as well, over there. Mr. Hajar, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to start by, well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by saying I agree with everything that JD has said. It's going to be another barrier, another board of really well-meaning people, but uninformed, and it's going to run up costs, professional costs. It's so expensive to make anything work these days. A lot of projects are not getting done because the cost of construction is so high, and this will only make it higher. So you have less things getting done, less things renovated, less beautiful markets like JD just built as a result. So I want to go on the record of being completely against it. I know I'd like to ask JD, how long did it take you to get your permits to build the 2 Pence Market?
Yeah, we did not have a commissioner at the time, so we had an acting commissioner that was in, so there was a substantive delay associated with that. But it took about a little over a year for an adaptive reuse of an existing building between planning approval and building approval. Both of those processes independently were probably 6 to 8 months, but because there was a lapse there without an acting commissioner, it slowed down the process a little bit. So that, again, that's without this involved. It's already for an adaptive, relatively straightforward use project like that. It's already about.
This will only make it longer. And
absolutely.
Fortunately, you were able to carry the building and pay your taxes and your mortgage and everything else. A lot of people can't do that. I know we did the facade over. I have the building across the street from the 2 Pence Market where Citizens Bank is, and my office is right there. It took us so many meetings, so much time, and I didn't get any more rent from Citizens as a result of doing the facade over. They have a very long-term lease. When I did it out of pride, I wanted to make the area look nice. If there was a historic district in another layer and more expense, I would have said, the heck with it. Why go through all that and pull my hair out? So I am completely against this. I think it's really bad for that part of the town, and the opposite will happen. There'll be less development as opposed to more. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If I could just add to, a good example is one of the buildings that I own is it's a 2-story building. It's 73 to 79 Adams Street. It's got 8 office spaces on it, but I did a copper standing seam roof. So because there was no local historic district, I could go down to the building department with a light set of plans just to replace a front roof section. It was old cedar shakes. I don't know if any of you remember, they were very beat up, very distressed. Very easy permit for the building department to issue because it's a simple front roof replacement. I don't think I would have pursued that project if I had to go before a board, put together a set of plans. The project was already expensive. It's a very small roof section. If I had to add additional costs and additional time on top of that, I would have just said, you know what, I'll just let that continue until I absolutely have to replace it. Those are the types of improvements that aren't gonna happen. And if you look at the village right now, a lot of it is asphalt shingles and vinyl siding and vinyl windows. Like a lot of the character of some of these older buildings has already been kind of stripped out. And I would love to see all of that come back to a wood clapboard, a slate roof, copper flashing. The problem is I don't think that the smaller properties are in a financial position to commit to that, and I don't think they're gonna pursue any sort of improvement because they're gonna be terrified that if they touch their siding, someone's gonna tell them that they have to replace it with something more significant. And if the response is that, no, that's not what they're gonna do, then I have to ask the question, well, why are we doing this then, right? If you're gonna allow them to put vinyl siding back on it, then why are we going through this exercise? Why are we adding this layer of regulation? It's one or the other. We either make a commitment to make all of the village come up to historic design standards, or we don't. And I think if you pick that side, more property owners are gonna show up because they're gonna realize that they can't afford to keep their property if this gets imposed. So I think it's concerning, and I think there needs to be more public outreach and more community engagement.
Thanks for the information. I feel like in sort of an underlying tension between the issue here, behind the bylaws, on the one hand, an interest in preserving sort of a uniquely historic part of town, particularly, significant alterations or worse. On the other hand, allowing the right amount of, growth in that area. And if not for this bylaw, what's to sort of protect on the front end of the issue? I mean, from your perspective, having gone through that process, I'm partly asking so that someone, not familiar with the existing process to understands like what's involved. Like are from your perspective, is there adequate sort of protection against those concerns in place now?
So when it comes to minor repairs, no. I think as it's written right now, anybody can replace the siding on their house down in Milton Village with whatever they'd like, and I think that shows. Unfortunately, the opposite is also true, that if you were to impose a harsh standard on individuals who've owned property for a long time, where they have to do cedar clapboards and aluminum clad windows, you are now essentially, it's essentially a government taking, where you're putting overly costly burden on them, where they're not they cannot afford to repair the property, so it's forcing a sale in a lot of ways. With taxes going up, I think it's a delicate issue, and I think it needs to be more thoroughly discussed. On larger scale projects, we just modified the site plan review process as part of this town, which is a much higher barrier to entry for applicants. So historically, it was kind of gray on what exactly was needed in your application to get in the door for site plan review, which is the planning board's process for determining kind of larger scale projects. And with the new site plan review bylaw, it's much more spelled out exactly what that is. So with that comes pros and cons. The pro is that the applicant has a much better understanding of what's ahead of them and what the board's gonna expect, and the board can presumably be more efficient in their processes and review. The downside to that is it's you can't get in the door without spending six figures. I mean, it's a massive lift on the front end to show up with a completed application. So, we certainly have that. We do have a demolition delay for anything historic in this town. I know it's only 2 years. And candidly, if this local historic district only was trying to deter demolition because that 2 years is inadequate, I wouldn't even be here right now. I have no intention of tearing anything down that's historic. And if I ever did, I would be engaging the community just as I always have, and I'd be engaging in that discussion. But this isn't just demolition. This is any building permit. So, I think if you look at the village over the past 70 years, it's pretty much all stayed in the same hands of the same individuals. It's finally trading hands, and fortunately, I would argue that they're in hands that care about this town. I live right up the street. I'm a property owner down in the area. I'm also sitting on the building committee for the Wharf Park, trying to help fundraise for that. I coach youth football, heavily engaged in the community. I care deeply about this town. I care about my brand and my reputation. So for all intents and purposes, I would say that the four most historically significant buildings are 1 Elliott Street, which I currently own, are 2 Elliott Street, which was just converted to 2 Pence Market. Third, I would argue is the Masonic Building, which is where the post office and the hardware store is. I own that building as well. And then the fourth, I would probably say, is the Joseph Fenno House, which is the brick front to the left of the Citizens ATM, which I also own. So all 4 of those buildings are in my hands, and all of those have been improved. Joseph Fenno House, I redid the entire brick facade on the front of the building, redid all the shutters, repainted the whole building. 2 Elliott Street was just converted to 2 Pence Market. 1 Elliott Street was stabilized into an adaptive reuse, brought in new tenants, new offices. I've done a pretty significant property cleanup over there. So I think a lot of our concerns are addressed by having ownership who wants to collaborate and come to these meetings and present and have honest conversations about what we want as a community, not just as an applicant. And then lastly, it was all kind of taken out of the MBTA zoning, so that doesn't really apply. The only buildings, and Nick could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the only buildings down in the village that are part of this that did get included in the MBTA zoning are 1 Elliott Street, the extra space storage in 88 Wharf, is that correct? I think that's right. Yeah. So most of the buildings that would be of concern, that are maybe smaller and probably could be torn down, aren't gonna get the benefit, and then they're gonna go through the overlay and the design guidelines that come with that. So there already are established design guidelines that were over multiple years vetted. So I know it was a long-winded answer, hopefully that was helpful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit confused, because when we had, when the proponents of the historic district bylaw presented, I was on the understanding, based on the testimony, that this would apply only to demolition. And it seems as though perhaps it doesn't. And I understand that, you know, there's probably more work to be done, like back and forth, to get more business buy-in to this before it goes forward. But say if this were to apply to demolition, would it be fair to say that it would be better for a business owner to encounter restrictions on demolition earlier in the permitting process, you know, before, as you mentioned, zoning and planning board approval, than at like the very end?
Yes, if this would only apply to demolition, and I can't speak for any of the individuals on the call or anyone sitting behind me, but I certainly would be substantively less concerned and probably would have no real resistance to this. Practically speaking, the way, if you were gonna try to do a substantive project that involved demolition, the way you'd handle that is you would start with this local historic district on the front end, provide a notice of a project intent, where you essentially explore it, figure out the feasibility before you start spending the money to pursue the.
You might not even buy the property.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I mean, candidly, I would ask you guys to think about your own residential properties. This is gonna affect our property values, right? The marketability of our property gets decreased substantially, because the majority of individuals that buy commercial real estate do not want over-regulation over commercial real estate. It creates unpredictability, it creates friction. So overnight, we're losing value in our properties. And in my particular situation, again, I can't speak for individuals, I've invested millions of dollars down in Milton Village. I've paid millions of dollars in taxes cumulatively across all the properties. And to have that value taken away is frustrating.
Does it add value to your business by having historic district guidelines in the area?
So my understanding is that so on the business, I am a real estate broker, but on the sales side out, there is no value improvement because of it. Most people shy away from properties that are regulated because it does affect your ability as a homeowner to do a lot of improvements.
So it's on the regulation aspect of this, not in the relative aesthetic quality of the buildings in your immediate vicinity.
I'm not sure fully, do you mind?
So you're saying that the regulation drives down the value of the property, like the regulation in the area is what drives it down, but the aesthetic standards in the immediate vicinity of your property don't have a bearing on your property's value?
So if all of the buildings came up in aesthetic, the village would be worth more economically from a valuation standpoint.
Yeah.
The issue with that analysis is that over-regulation often leads to unintended consequences.
Okay.
Like rent control is a good example of that. On its face, a relatively facially neutral and productive
Yeah.
policy, but the actual implications are that landlords just choose not to improve their property and keep rents lower because it doesn't make financial sense to invest in it.
Yeah.
So I think what you'll see is a village that historically has had legacy ownership that hasn't invested in their properties. Anybody that is considering doing an improvement, depending on the financial position, will probably pass on it because they will not be in a financial position to make the improvement.
Okay.
And that's what I was saying about you know, if the answer to that is no, we're not trying to make it more expensive, well, then it's, what are we doing here if we're gonna allow people to put vinyl siding back on their houses?
Yeah.
Right, and that's the hard part. If everything came up, would I be happy with it? Of course I would. Do I think that that's even remotely practical or realistic? No. I think that would be financial suicide for many of the property owners down there, to be forced to spend that level of money on their property if they're not in a financial position to do so.
Okay.
Many questions for me, that was very thorough, thank you, Mr. Wild. Quick question, is there anything in this article as written that you found to be additive to the district as a resident and or business owner?
Anything that would add value,
Yeah.
you're saying? I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to want more control over demolition. I think 1 Elliott Street and the Masonic Building are probably the two nicest buildings in the town of Milton. It would be an absolute shame if they ever disappeared. And I can see how there's a concern about the demolition delay only giving the board 2 years maximum. I just don't think that that's reality in today's economic times. I don't think anybody would ever purchase any of those buildings and then tear them down. The math would never make sense. You have pre-existing beautiful brick buildings that you're paying for on the front end. It is so expensive to build those buildings now. They're all small sites. It's not like you can squeeze in a ton of construction there. So, you know, I can see the argument for a demolition restriction capability in the village. I think that's a fair request. I personally don't see making it harder for businesses, make it harder for, I think we should be rolling out the red carpet for property owners in Milton Village to improve their properties and spend money to replace the roof, replace the window. I think we should be doing whatever we can to make it easier and fast track the permitting for them. So, you know.
Thank you. Also, thank you for, and congratulations on opening of 2 Pence and your work in the town, not only a business owner, but again, as a resident and parent in the town. I think it was really important for you all to join us, just so we have a complete view, or more complete view of the article, particularly with zoning and anything related to properties and building. We need to have an understanding of all of the impacts, whether intended or not. Because these things do get very complicated and complex, and the fallout can be dire. I think all of us that would like something newer in Milton, whether it's aesthetic or for quality of life, it's really important that we understand what we're putting on the books for business owners, as well as what can be created for our residents. So thank you for your time, Mr. Wild. I do see a couple folks in the back, but I have no other questions from the board. I think we have to vote.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thank you, much appreciated.
I have my notes on this. Do you want me to just email a clean copy?
Yeah, if you email it, then forward to the board, we'll have it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Mr. Lawfer.
Can I?
Yeah, so Mr. Lawfer, I'm gonna give you some time to sort
I
of
can do this in 3
share,
minutes.
but I will say that the intention is not for it to be kind of a point counterpoint.
No,
tit for tat.
no, I just wanted to let JD know and the board know, factually, when something becomes an historic district, values do go up. They absolutely go up. In this case, the other issue is that the definition of historical can end up being just one building in that area. It's not all of the buildings. All of the buildings will not fall under this. And my understanding from working on this for 4 years is it's going to work at the same time as everything else. I agree with JD, he should go first to the historical committee, that there won't be a slowdown. There is, 2 Pence is another gentrification, it's an awesome, and that bank building, that's a beautiful renovation. It never would have been not permitted. So the other thing that happened over those 4 years is we did a series of polls on Milton website. We had well, in 4 years, we probably had 40 meetings, all of them public. We had called for 3 public meetings when we only needed to have 1. That's all in the past. Between now and town meeting, we're going to ramp that up. We're going to speak to every individual business owner and property owner. And we're going to provide them information how this enhances the area, not detriment to any of the building. Milton has been building and changing for years. We want to keep a flavor of that. We do not want to slow down growth at all. And this particular bylaw was written with that in mind. What happened before with other towns is not necessarily what's in our bylaw. And I think that's a difference. And I'm looking forward to reaching out to the public with more information, including JD. I think JD has done an absolutely wonderful job with everything that he's done. And he is an asset, a huge asset to this town.
Answer the questions, please. First, on the polls that you said were on the website, do you have any gross numbers of how many respondents you had to the poll?
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Do you have any number of respondents you had to the polls, the ones that you've put up over the years?
They happened at the very beginning, 4 years ago. I don't remember that, but we can get that information.
Okay.
And we asked very generalized questions. Would it be a good idea? Wouldn't be a good idea? And there were 3 of those polls, and they were up on the website for a good long while.
Secondly, you said, you spoke about buildings being designated as historic. Is that the intention of this body, to designate certain buildings as historic?
No.
Could I just, sorry, Mr. Green,
Sure.
if I could just add in, so it is a historic district. So we have, the Historical Commission has said anything that's 75 years or older would come under review if they were being demolished in the town. But there's a large list of inventoried items. There are newer buildings and buildings that have been altered significantly in this area. The reason why it is a district, and every building actually would fall under this, the historic buildings and the not historic buildings, because, and a lot of those I think would be welcome to be torn down and rebuilt. But you want the new buildings, the renovations to work in context and to be sensitive to the historic buildings. So if you have these beautiful, and again, compliments to JD, if every developer was like JD, I just, that would be amazing. But we can't guarantee that every developer is gonna be JD. So this just gives when a new building is built, what they're gonna do is in context with the rest of the neighborhood. And so that's why there is a mapped area. And this is really a location that already we're seeing the potential. The name of JD's company is Elevated. He has elevated this area already. It's such a significant, and it's so exciting to see what the potential is down here. But we're very vulnerable to demolition. Again, JD's not gonna tear down the buildings. He owns most of the, historically significant buildings, but there's a lot that can still happen down there that we just wanna make sure that somebody doesn't come in and say, wow, I thought this really, wild looking building with a nail salon, it would be perfect here. We don't know that. So this just allows oversight. Yes, we do have, the planning board does have the guidelines in there, but as we talked about, they're just not enforceable. So this is a layer that just would make sure that those standards, and the standards really that JD has set the bar high for anyone who does work down there. I think this is, it's an opportunity, but I think just tonight's conversation and hearing JD, and I hear everything he's saying as a business owner, a developer, I'm in real estate myself, I'm very sensitive to market conditions and in his experience in development. I think this is more of a reason, and I do think, I actually talked to someone, Nick Armada,
who is I just wanna have his title here, this past week. He's the Senior Preservation Planner in the Office of Historic Preservation for the state. He actually just moved, but he was a resident of Lower Mills, living on the Dorchester side. And he said, I can't think of a better local historic district. But he said the one thing that he really recommends is really getting community input on this and doing community outreach. And I think this is part of, I think we both feel this way, really doing some community outreach on this and having Chris Skelly, if we could, I would be willing to put this, to hold off. I know this
We disagree on this.
this board has worked so hard, they're ready to go to town meeting, but I think until the fact that JD wasn't part of that conversation, we want to have
Wait a
this.
minute, JD was part of the
conversation.
conversation
Well, I
and
just-
he's always been included.
Always been included, yes, oh
Okay.
yes,
So,
but I think what my point is, having someone like JD speak is wonderful and be involved, but we also need someone who can show the cons of this, cause I think that's what you all are all weighing is what are the cons and the pros, how do they balance out? And somebody who could come to, who has statewide experience with how this works in different towns, communities, can come address your board, the warrant committee, the planning board, the historical commission, and sort of usher this to town meeting and have a presentation, which Chris Skelly does for other towns, other communities, present this, and then town meeting decides, because obviously, there's different, it's a balance, and the pros and the cons. And I think if we could see both sides, or at least have that opportunity, and have maybe a more robust outreach, because I know Larry has done a lot of outreach.
we are
on this.
gonna do more outreach, we
Yeah,
talked about that in
yes,
our meeting
yes.
last night.
So is the timeline, and I would, look to the select board on that, but the bylaw is pretty much ready, it's pretty much boilerplate for what the state offers. But I think having a consultant on board to really be able to talk about this from, we're volunteers, but somebody who does this professionally, who can really talk to how the effects of this and what the pros are versus the cons, what is the balance, how do you seek the balance?
In a lot of the conversation tonight, I've heard demolition said often. I don't think we've had any demolitions in Milton Village area.
Not in the Milton Village area,
Not in the Milton
so,
Village area.
we've.
So if that is one of the main causes or purposes of the historic village, could we not make this more narrow to limit demolitions instead of an all-encompassing historic village and an unelected board that would sort of move on the whims of the body at the time without set historic guidelines before developers?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that would be a
Absolutely.
question that
Yeah.
we certainly could look into. Again, it leaves, and I'll just, you can look at what's happening in East Milton right now. There's inconsistency, and I think that's where having a cohesive look to a historic district is part of the goals, because we want this to be experiential. So when you go, down to Charles Street, and if you go to Newbury Street, there's an aesthetic that's a cohesive aesthetic. So you can take out the demolition, but I think it's to our advantage to have some sort of, and again, oversight, not, over scrutinizing a property. And again, this board would actually elect the commission. So you would have control over who the appointees are. There would be one appointee for 1 year, 2 appointees for 2 years, and 2 appointees for 3 years. You all control that. So if you're seeing an issue, it's under your control to not reappoint that commissioner. And so that piece, you do have a say in who that commission would be. But I think we could definitely talk about the demolition, because I know the historical commission, that's been the biggest issue, is that we don't have a tool to prevent demolition. And again, some of those buildings, I would be fine with having them, or, we would love to see them demolished and something nicer put in there. But it would be, nice to have things that work in relationship to one another, to have a cohesive look, because I think this is going to be a destination for people to come, and the economic development that will come out of this. Actually, the opportunity for tourism. I mean, I think that's something that Milton and the select board, for financial reasons, Milton really could be a destination for historic tours, the museums that we have here, some of the assets that we have, really sort of capitalizing on that, on the historic areas that we have. And I think this area is really one that would draw from outside of town. As we all know, we go to Newburyport, we go to these different areas that they're like, wow, isn't this great? Don't we wish Milton was like this, that we had more gathering places? And I think Milton Village has the potential to be that. And already, again, with what JD's doing, activating the waterfront, having, view sheds where you can sit outside over gas fire pits, overlooking the water. We wanna draw people in, but we know JD, we don't know who else could come. So this is more of, not for, current owners who are really vested, who care, who are in the town, but that doesn't always happen, and some people really don't care. It's more of a financial decision that they're making in their development projects, and this just gives some parameters.
The demolition issue would not get to the historical committee, it would be worked in before that. We're looking at physical aspects of it, not demolition, but how does it look and how does it match? And we are not going to dictate what other buildings are. That's not our job. We won't do that. That's the planning commission and that's the zoning board. We're just there to protect the historical nature of what Milton is for 300 plus years and for another 200 or 3. That's the objective. And demolition is not part of our bylaw.
Well, I was gonna ask something similar to try to explore whether there's like there's opportunity or appetite to take the next few months to see if there's room for further discussion around a compromise that could significantly raise the threshold of what would need to go to the historic commission. And I don't think there's appetite for that. I just think these are two just fundamentally different views that we need to decide whether it should go to town meeting on or not. I don't see, I mean, it seems like, Larry, you and JD have worked in good faith to try to kind of bring it closer together. And at this point, I'm not hearing an appetite to get to the questions of making this like, demolition only or like major changes only. Like I think it's an interest in kind of trying to regulate sort of the aesthetics, right?
Yeah.
Am I, okay.
Yep. And the aesthetic really comes down to individual buildings that would be determined to be the best example of that type of architecture. All of the buildings, everything in that historic district is the historic district. The reason why Milton Village was chosen were two reasons. One, it's part of the planning group had decided that. And two, it's the only area that wasn't designated either state or federal and in any protection. And we have many federal and many more state places that are historic. Milton Village was not protected in that way.
I guess one comment and then a suggestion. One, I just sort of wanna commend the dialogue. I mean, I think we're talking about pretty different perspectives on how to handle the issue. And I think everyone's really, spoken about each other and each other's positions with high level of respect. I think that's a very good thing. I think it's my perspective that we should just decide whether to send this to town meeting. I just think that it's been at it for a couple of years now. I'm not sure what the benefit is to, you know, further defer that decision. You know,
Well, I think that I am concerned of if two sides are this separate at this point, when it gets to town meeting, it may not be a productive conversation, right? Like we may end up having to rework it. It may fail. Because folks
Where
tell me it may.
where the two
Yeah.
sides come together, both sides want the best Milton. That's where we come together. It's how we do that. And in JD's understanding, and I totally agree, anything that slows down that process is a problem to a builder, is a problem to a developer. And we would rather not do that.
How does that impact the 60-day add-on that was surfaced?
How does that,
You said you would not like to delay a developer, but I
Right.
believe Mr. Wild spoke about this commission adding
I
at least
think there's
60
two things
days
there,
in delay.
Winston.
Yes.
One is where they go to where and when they go to the historical district, and I agree completely with JD. Find that out before you spend any money, because that's going to determine some things. I lost myself.
Where would you see historic district being in the process? So at what point do you think that developers and builders should go to the historic district? Should they be first, or is it, as it is right now, last on the checklist?
Yet to be determined. You know, I think they should go first. A builder or developer can go anywhere at any time they want to. They determine where they want, and there are some certain things, the planning board and all of that, they have spent a lot of money to make that presentation. They're going to do that anyway, so they might as well take that presentation to the historical commission and let them approve, so they don't have to worry about it.
Thank you. Thank you both. Interest of time.
Thank you.
It's a good
Thank you
conversation.
for coming and sharing. Nick, do you need a motion about adding this to the warrant tonight? Does this need to go to the warrant committee?
Yes, so for the special town meeting for October 19th, that warrant needs to be complete and printed by the second week of September, so we are up against a deadline here. If the warrant committee is aware that this may arrive to them, it has been submitted by the local historic district's committee to the study committee to be included on the warrant. So the action of the board as to whether to include it or not. Generally, the board has been, deferential to committees, but the warrant is under the selectmen's hands. Articles that need to be included in the warrant.
And with some of the language that was surfaced tonight that may need to be massaged, I didn't have a chance to look at this newly updated version. If we vote to send it tonight, can that language still be changed and added?
Yes, we addressed the quorum issue, so there are 5 members of the commission, quorum is 3, and a simple majority, which is 3 votes, would be required to approve. So it's always the quorum of whoever is present in that meeting to vote, so that has been cleaned up, and that brings it in accordance with a special act that governs quorums in Milton. So it's consistent with all the other rules about quorums for other boards in the town as well.
So, before we vote, I will say I'm hesitant to not include this in the warrant because of how much time has already been spent on this article. I think we're going on at least 4 years of work. I share Member Haggerty's concern with if it does not pass, was it worth bringing it to the town? But that is the process, right? If it does not pass the vote, if the town says no, then it is the will of the residents. I would not say that we should not include it. The work has been done. Language can still be changed and massaged or updated. We will have our opportunity to weigh in before town meeting on our opinion, we still have time there. The warrant committee will have their time to weigh in as well, and so will the town meeting members. But I would not want to prevent the rest of the town from seeing and having their say. So before we take a motion, if anyone wants to comment on that, before we move forward.
So I think if the proponents are willing to try to work to enhance this, that would be I am concerned, I sometimes feel like things get to the floor of town meeting that are not in a state of readiness, and I don't think that's always good for the body.
I agree with Megan. I think that even amongst the committee members, differing opinions, right? And I think we've heard varying different opinions from folks this evening. And so I think it's hard when a small body, right? It's not clear what this all means, and I think that the committee has asked for help, making this very clear. I think we're a long way from this being clear for town meeting. And that's where I think there would be a lot of
agree
work
with
to
the
do.
two ladies.
Okay, I will take a motion for us to vote, and if this will be included.
Move to include in the special town meeting warrant the article to establish a Milton Village local district.
Motion made. And you can second.
Second,
Motion made, seconded. Vote, Mr. Joseph.
no.
Mr. Rochelle.
Yes.
No.
And I will abstain. Motion does not carry. Will not be included in your article.
Mr. Bailey?
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna go home and get on the computer, right? I'm not feeling too good,
Okay.
all right? Get right on.
Feel better.
All right, with that, we will move to item 5, discussion and approval, recommendation of our audit committee for audit firm for fiscal years 27, 28, and 29.
I will defer to Amy Dexter, Town Finance Director and Town Accountant. And you have Amy's memo as well as the proposal from CBIZ.
Give it a second here, Amy.
Okay, pardon?
Let's give it a second, a little more clear so we can hear you. Let's say, text John, can't do that.
Yeah, he'll be on it.
Okay.
Okay.
Floor is yours.
Okay, so I'm here to represent the audit committee. The chair is traveling overseas, so she asked me to present the recommendation. But the audit committee chose to, or decided it would be a best practice to go out and issue an RFP for audit services for fiscal years 27, 28, and 29. And we did that, and we received 3 responses to that RFP. The firms being Haig, Sahadi and Company CPAs, CBIZ, CPAs PC, and Clifton Larson LLP. CBIZ is the current audit firm that performs the town's audit, and the committee had a robust discussion about the 3 firms as to the size of the firm, the experience of the staff, the number of municipal clients, if they had any experience auditing and performing test work on retirement systems, and the references we did with the help of Assistant Town Administrator Cody. He helped us send out a Google form to get references on the 3 firms. And the audit committee voted to recommend to this body to appoint CBIZ PC as the town's audit firm for fiscal 27, 28, and 29.
Questions? Councilor Wu?
Can you speak to so this is the same firms that we've used in the past, can you speak to the proposal in terms of the amount of money, the increase in potential cost or decrease in cost, and also the relative value of the prior contract to this, like, are we getting more for our money, less for our money, same amount of services for our money?
Okay, so of the three proposals we received, Haig Sahadi came in total cumulative for the 3 years at $232,500. CBIZ came in at $250,500, and Clifton Larson Allen came in at $306,000. After the lengthy discussion, the audit committee was unanimous in its belief that Clifton Larson was cost prohibitive. So then it came down to the two firms. Haig Sahadi is, they have 17 staff people in their firm, of which there's one audit partner. And 10 of those staff people have municipal experience in the state of Massachusetts. So the general consensus there was that the firm was too small and that we would be better served with CBIZ. They're medium-sized. They have gone through a transition over the last couple of years where they used to be Powers and Sullivan. They were purchased by Markham LLC and most recently by CBIZ. There is news out there that there's a potential buyout from Grant Thornton of CBIZ. But the belief is that the hope is that it will improve service, if anything. Our experience with CBIZ, it was a little rocky through those transitions, but overall they work well with the town staff, very professional, knowledgeable, and supportive on a daily basis if I have to call them with a question. They're available, they're responsive, and their level of service has been, very good over the last several years. Between the three of them, the RFP was pretty specific. One of the main points that the audit committee was concerned about was meeting deadlines. And so they were all agreed to the timeline where it was requested, I believe, to have drafts by the end of December or January, I think January, because the deadline for the filing with the federal clearinghouse is March 31st. So we just wanted to make sure that we had enough time to meet that deadline. So they all seem to meet that. I think all three firms are great, but they, different reason why the audit committee chose to move forward with CBIZ.
And just to clarify, the committee felt that the acquisition by Grant Thornton would be potentially good in terms of added capacity?
So that information came to light last week.
Okay.
And the committee did not meet to discuss that.
Okay.
But I sent out an email informing each of them, asked them to respond to me and to me only if they felt the decision should be reconsidered.
Okay.
And there was no strong response that should happen and that we should move forward as originally planned.
I mean, I would assume that they're gonna provide additional capacity to the.
I think the importance with the size of the firm was if you have a firm as small as the one with only 17 people, you don't have an opportunity to change up audit staff. And it's just, there was concerns there. They didn't, in the information they provided, it didn't seem like they had a lot of experience with retirement systems as well. They had a lot of, they had some more city experience, like I believe City of Attleboro was one of their Massachusetts clients. They're more focused, they're located in Fall River, but they seem to have more of their clients in Rhode Island. And they have a lot of school districts.
What protections does the potential contractor as the past contract included for the town if, say if the relationship changes through this acquisition, you know, can Grant Thornton change the terms or the level of service on the contract? And what are the town's means of recourse if in a given year the performance isn't up to snuff? Like I know it's a 3-year contract, do we have any ability to terminate the contract if after a year, the first year of the contract is not working well and to seek a different vendor?
It's my understanding that, we have a signed contract that it will be honored. And I believe, and Nick, maybe you can help me out here, I believe there is a section that in the RFP that if the performance wasn't met as outlined in the RFP, that we could terminate.
Okay.
Is that your understanding?
So yes, the town can terminate at its convenience with notice.
We
The
have
contractor
termination
can,
convenience
and
clause. Okay.
they can assign it with the town's approval.
Okay.
In this case, we likely would be contracting, depending on the timeline, most likely with CBIZ, so there might be assigning that contract then to Grant Thornton, but that is allowed, and the town may terminate, but not the vice versa.
Okay. Good. That's it for my questions on the
All
non-contract.
Any other questions or thoughts?
I'm trying not to kill Winston here.
Or take a motion.
No, I read the materials, I think they have extensive municipal town experience and move to approve the recommendation of the audit committee for an audit firm for fiscal years 2027, 2028, and 2029.
All right, motion made.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Mr. Rochelle?
Yes.
Ms. Nolan?
Yes.
Haggerty?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move to item 6, discussion and approval of our water and sewer rates for fiscal year 2027. Mr. Milton.
Thank you. We are joined tonight remotely by DPW Director Tom McCarthy, who will be joining us momentarily. We also have with us Todd Prokop and Scott Salvucci from Wood and Curran, who assisted with our rate report that I provided via email and as well in the packet. Todd and Wood and Curran have prepared a brief PowerPoint. I'll display that now and let Todd lead us through, unless Tom, there was any other introductory comments that you wanted to make before I turn it over to Wood and Curran.
Let's leave it to the professionals.
Tom, thanks for calling in from the field.
No problem. I apologize for not being there in person.
No worries.
Yeah, I appreciate the guidance. We'll get through this quickly. So the rate setting that we work on for water and sewer rates in Milton is relatively straightforward. We've got a budget established by the town meeting warrant that of expenses. We look back at the last, in this case, 5 years worth of consumption of water and sewer, consumption of water, which is also the sewer usage, and figure out what rate the town needs to charge to meet those financial obligations based on the amount of water and sewer we expect to be used. So again, very simple kind of calculation from that standpoint. We're looking here at the FY27 revenues and expenses. So we'll go through water first, then sewer. Overall water, we can advance the, do you have the, how do I advance this slide?
I got it.
Oh, you got it, okay, perfect, there. So overall water, the total revenue needed is relatively flat. It goes up about $24,000 from FY26 to FY27, which is, modest, certainly for an $8 million budget. You can see over half of that budget is the assessment from the MWRA, who supplies water to Milton, to the town of Milton at about 4.4 million. We have, in this case, with the 5-year look back, we have 2021, which was a large usage year, falling off. And so that's driving the anticipated amount of water that will be consumed down a little bit. So in this case, even though the numerator and the calculation is kind of staying almost the same with only a $24,000 increase, we're expecting a potential decrease in usage, and so that does drive the rates up slightly. If we go one more slide, we'll see the usage trends for water. This is consumption trends. And you can see, with the exception of maybe 2023 being a little bit of a high year, that things have been relatively stable. We've seen some increases, especially at the tier 4 level in like 2024, 2025, and now into 26. But again, things relatively, Milton is relatively built out. No major expansions. Things are relatively stable here. And so when we look at those revenues and these water consumption trends, we can see what the rates are predicted to be, or proposed to be rather, and it should. There we go. So for water, we're looking at a 3.5% increase over FY26 into FY27. You can see that base rate was 710 in FY26. That's per 100 cubic feet or 748 gallons. Still relatively cheap in the scheme of buying water, I think. But yeah, again, across the board, we're looking at a 3.5% increase. Milton uses what's called an increasing block rate structure. So as you use more and more water, the higher volumes get a little bit more expensive, just to try to encourage conservation and spread the costs around to those who are impacting the system the most. You can see, with this increase, the MWRA publishes an average sort of family, and that bill would go from about $248 a quarter to about $256. So again, relatively modest. We can then jump right into sewer. Sewer, you can see we do have a little bit higher of expense increase in sewer at 3.6%. So that's about $340,000 up on that $9.8 million, $9.9 million total utility cost. You can see with sewer, the vast majority, 75% of that cost is money that is assessed by the MWRA to the town of Milton, right? Costs that are really, largely outside of the town's control. We don't expect, luckily, we don't have quite the same decrease in expected sewerage, and so that does help us hold the rate closer to the same rate. We can jump forward one. Yep, there. So we're looking at the sewer consumption trends. For the vast majority of homeowners, water and sewer bills are going to be based on the same number. It's whatever the water meter reads, but some folks will have meters that are only used for water, especially irrigation, other things like that. And so that's why we do have different consumption amounts for water and sewer, because there's some water that never hits the sewer. When we look at those trends and that increase, the just over 3% increase in expenses, that leads to about a 2% rate increase across the board for the sewer rates. So we can move forward one there, and the rates should show up. So you can see, again, 4 tiers, it gets, just like water gets more expensive, the more sewage that you use. Like I mentioned, it's a 2% rate increase. So in this case, even though the expenses are up a little bit over 3%, we are able to hold that rate increase a little bit lower than that, just because of the planned, the likely increase in consumption. You can see that it's charged in the same rates per 100 cubic feet. That base rate will jump from $8.98 to $9.16, and that'll drive that average bill from $4.59 to about $4.68, $4.69 per quarter. We've got one more slide that's very dense. It's probably better to look at in the packet than on this slide, but it shows that rate increase for a whole lot of different sort of example users within the town of Milton. The highlighted case in the middle is the one I was citing the numbers from. That's MWRA's sort of standard, average bill that we really look at to understand how it's going to affect most of the residents in town. That is the last slide of my brief PowerPoint presentation.
I'll just add a little bit of additional context, that on the sewer side, the pressure that we're seeing is that MWRA assessment has gone up pretty quickly the last few years. It's tied obviously to flows, but also to their own cost to treat at Deer Island, for the entire district. So we're feeling pressure on the sewer side, largely related to the MWRA assessment. And then in terms of what, as these are enterprise funds, they're standalone funds, they have their own reserves, referred to as retained earnings. So water is in a much stronger position overall, with upwards of $3 million in its retained earnings, which is 35 to 45% of its budget. So it's it has strong reserves. The fiscal 27 budget draws down a little bit of those reserves to buy down that rate increase a little bit. So invest some one-time money into this year's budget to help offset the rate increase. By the flip side, sewer, although it is closer to a $9 million, $9.5 million budget, its reserves are closer to $1.5 million, so a little bit more vulnerable to a big swing or a very wet year. If our rate drops, our costs aren't gonna drop, our revenue will significantly drop, so that's why we have pretty significant reserve balances in both the enterprise funds. Our costs are very static, the revenue can vary significantly. So in terms of the overall stability of the enterprise funds, they're both very stable. I'd say that sewer is a little bit lower than we would like it. Water is a little bit higher than we probably need it to be. So we'll use that free cash, retained earnings, likely in the upcoming budget, to likely on some capital to draw that down a little bit as we continue to build the reserves. So that's just a little bit of the broader enterprise fund financial condition.
Thank you both. Questions or comments from the members? If not, I will take a motion.
Move to approve the FY 2027 water and sewer rates.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. O'Shaughnessy.
Yes.
Snow.
Yes.
Saggerty.
Yes,
And-
I believe Mr. Driscoll was on that
Yes.
screen.
Nope, that's Mr. McCarthy.
We saw John Driscoll.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
on
he's
somewhere.
Yeah.
And yes, Tom, I'll give you a chance. We didn't go to you for anything you want to share.
No, I think we covered just about everything. And Woodward and Kara does a great job, and obviously Nick and his guidance, it's helped me along as I'm first getting into this myself.
Thank you.
Thanks for.
John is there now.
Yep. We'll wait for him. Put the camera on for the next one. I don't think he heard all of the discussion. But thank you.
Thanks, Mitch. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
With that, we'll move to item 7, discussion update Library College potential acquisition and review of buildings. Chair of the school committee, our superintendent. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. And I believe Mr. O'Rourke is online. All right, floor is yours if you want to do some introductions before we start.
Mark Loring, Chair of the School Committee and Vice Chair of the School Building.
I am Shanali Rajani. I'm a Senior Project Manager at the DLR Group.
Good evening, my name is John Gallo, I'm the interim superintendent of Milton Public Schools.
And online?
Hey, good evening, Sean O'Rourke, Chair of the School Building Committee, and then also John Ollie, introduce yourself also.
Jana Silsby, I'm Principal in Charge from DLR Group.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
I think Sean's going to kick it off.
Yeah. So, Mr. Milano, do you want me to run the slides, or are you going to run them?
I can hold them if you give me a minute. I don't.
No, I have them ready. I know last presentations were running, so I'll share my screen if that's all right.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome there.
Just let me know when this comes through.
You're good.
You're good.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we're here tonight, essentially what we're here tonight to present is a culmination of our efforts kind of over the past 2 months, working with DLR Group in the school district for the educational program that we're looking at. So, as you're all aware, Library College became available shortly thereafter. School building committee and school committee really started investigating this. High level, the initial buildings that we look at or talk about are essentially 3 interconnected buildings. Building A, which is also known as the mansion. Building B, which is connected to Building A, which is essentially office space. And then Building C, which is the majority of the classroom spaces that are there. And Building C is connected through the gray hallway that you see on the left. Some things to keep in mind when we first looked at the building was Building C has existing classroom space, but they're roughly about 725 square feet. And the program that we're looking at, required us to make bigger classrooms. Also, there's no cafeteria as part of that building. There's no gymnasium. And then also in Building C, there are minimal bathrooms. And then finally, with the amount of renovations we'd have to be doing, we just want to be cognizant of the energy code. So for us, the process by which, we've been looking at this is, the school building committee looked to the school committee to develop an educational program that they thought would fit with this facility. So they determined a pre-KK facility would work best. So school building committee from that point on partnered up with DLR Group, and we'll go over a timeline on the next slide. And then collaboratively, the school committee, the school building committee, and DLR Group have essentially worked, in concert over the past 2 months. Jana, Shanali, I'll let you guys talk a little bit on, some of your efforts that you've done.
Thanks, Sean. So Jenna and I met with the school building committee to do an initial kickoff to understand what the expectations were for this project. And it was essentially to understand what were the space constraints, the opportunities and the challenges of converting this into a viable learning center for the town of Milton. We brought on FBRA as our structural consultant to do a high-level understanding of how is the building put together? Can it support this kind of learning community? And then we also brought in PMC as the cost estimator to help us understand what are the implications of looking at a couple of different options and what does that mean for the town of Milton. Jana is going to talk a little bit about how we got to the design options, but we ended up presenting 2 options initially. The first option, which I believe Sean's going to walk through in a minute, was just looking at the existing space without really adding anything. We had to make a little bit of addition for a stair and a lobby, but really using the footprint as is. And then another option of what do we do if we wanted to add more. And the reason we looked at these 2 options is to understand what the enrollment was for the town of Milton. And Jana, do you want to jump in and just talk about that for a minute?
Sure.
Thank you.
So in that first initial meeting with the early education director, Ms. Butler, as well as the superintendent, Phelan, it was to understand their high-level goals, like, is this a temporary building? Is it a long-term building? And everybody said if we invest, the town makes this investment, it's a long-term investment, which when you look at a long-term investment, you want to understand what's the potential for growth, as well as the ability to flex and change over time. We were given a set of space requirements that, like, okay, this is what we want to fit, into a project at a minimum. But then we also talked about, like, all right, well, how much growth? And there are different ways to think about it. Like, is this maximum capacity? Is it optimal capacity? I.e., you don't want every classroom to be 100% full, because therefore if somebody shows up, you have no seats available. And then do you want to do what they have now, which is half day, or do you also want to then have the option to go to full day? And so, in a nutshell, as Shanali mentioned, the first option was just see how much we can fit in the existing building. The second option was to provide the number of classrooms as well as the space like for admin and things like that were requested. And then third one took a more expansive and future-facing option that was like, all right, if we plan for growth, if we plan for full day pre-K, as a for instance, what would that look like? Because we wanted to do a test fit, sort of like thinking of it in terms of maximum. So we had smallest, medium, and then maximum options that gave the full range. And of course, if the project went ahead, you would do, full programming and everything and truly hone in on that design enrollment. And so the end result might be somewhere in between the options and not any one of these three, but we wanted to give a full range so that the school building committee could just understand what's possible.
Just to echo the efforts, the work that's been done essentially over the past month on this through DLR Group really takes a lot longer. So we ask, as you're reviewing some of the stuff, just keep in mind there's a lot more work as we progress with these options. Leading up to tonight, I just wanted to kind of give an overall timeline for what we're doing. So in April, there was an initial site visit by myself, town administrator, superintendent, and other representatives of the town. School committee shortly thereafter took on discussing educational options or program options that would be there. The week following that, school building committee allocated funds that we had remaining to secure architectural services. The week after that, the school committee voted on this educational program and we contracted with DLR Group. DLR Group, 2 weeks after that, walked the site. And then, we had that visioning session that John had talked about with the superintendent, the director of early childhood education. All that input led into a draft report that DLR Group put together very quickly for us. And then tonight, the overall final report and cost estimate. As I mentioned, I tried to keep this presentation brief, high level, call it executive summary. We do have floor plans, a 51-page detailed report that we can pull up and dive into as you have questions, but I wanted to keep it high level. So the first option, as John and Shanali talked about, was basically looking at the existing building and how we could utilize that and how much space we could truly get out of it for classrooms. So for classroom counts, for preschool, we were at 4 preschool. Just got to move this. Sorry about that. Zoom was blocking the counts. So 4 preschool, 2 special education. And then for kindergarten, there were 10 regular classrooms and 1 special education. This didn't meet the needs that were described in that visioning session that we had. But again, we did it as kind of the smallest case that we're looking at. The next one consists of a 2-level addition on the side of the property that you see here. That gets us up to the space count that we needed that was prescribed by the schools, which are 5 general pre-K classes, 2 special ed classes, 18 kindergarten classes, and 1 special ed class. And then because we had that addition, DLR Group looked at what a 3rd level on that space would look like. And, with that, it expanded pre-K out to 9 total classrooms, 2 additional special ed. Kindergarten had 20 and special ed again had 2. So what they've done is, we've looked at all these options and presented them to our cost estimator. So essentially for the options, we'll walk through them. For option 1, the construction cost was roughly $32 million, and the overall project cost, including soft cost, would be a total of $42 million. Sorry about that. The option 2 that we looked at, the 2-level addition, which is in the middle, total construction cost estimated at $57 million, and a total project cost of $74 million. And then finally, the 3rd option that we looked at, of a total project cost of $65 million and an overall project cost of $85 million. So as I mentioned, we do have much more detail that we can share, but again, I just wanted to keep it high level for this meeting. Knowing time is always critical with this board.
All right, members.
My first question will be to Mr. O'Rourke. What is your definition of total project cost?
So total project cost is essentially all soft costs for architects, engineers, permits, what is it, FF&E, the furniture and everything that builds it out. It does not include, if you're talking about salary costs or other additional costs like that, it does not include those.
Does it include like police details, construction contingency, like all that?
Correct. Yeah. So what we did is we can forward the cost estimate to you. So the initial cost estimate we had, they carried a 15% contingency, but knowing that we've only worked on this for roughly 2 months, we asked them to bump that to a 20% contingency.
Okay. Yep.
Just to clarify also for the public, it obviously doesn't include land acquisition costs.
Right. Yep.
Other members? All right, I'll do the yes second. My question is not on the construction, but on the programming. So I see listed about 450 students in pre-K and kindergarten. I just want to hear a little bit more about the program and it pre-K and kindergarten moving to this site, the impact it has on the schools, and any potential growth that would be either covered by this space or that we would predict for this space, and what it means for taking those students out of each elementary school. So what's the impact? What do we get for having this site?
John Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, we, at the June 3rd school committee meeting, went through a rubric of several different options to get to the programming option of pre-KK. What it does to the initial goal that the school building committee's been working on for a while, it does relieve space at the elementary level, at all 4 elementary levels, and I'll describe what that would look like. It does not provide relief to the middle school level because those grades will stay the same and there'll be no impact. And it does provide relief to the high school because the administrative offices of the middle public schools will leave the high school space and go down to the library space in the mansion part of the building, not in the school part, but the mansion part. So it doesn't fully address the needs of all 3 levels of the district, but it does address 2 of the 3. From a program perspective, what it would mean for each of our elementary schools is that they would lose each of their kindergarten classrooms. So if you're a 3-strand school like Tucker, you'd lose your 3K classes, so you'd have 3 spaces open. And they also house 2 of our preschool programs over the top. So each school would lose the amount of kindergarten classes they have, which at the Glover is 4, the Collecott is 4, sometimes 5, and Cunningham is 4. And the Cunningham also houses all the other preschool classes that are related to some separate classes and half-day programming as well, which would relieve the pressure on that larger facility at Collecott, which seems to be where the most pressure for enrollment squeeze is in the district. So that would be the main driver of this work. I think what it would do to the schools is they would all miss the little students. Everybody wants kindergarten in their school. It really is K-5 is that longest span that our families have in one building to grow relationships with their school teachers and their principal and create community. So it would be one less grade of that moving into the school. What I believe the positive sides are to the pre-KK is that we're creating an early learning center that's consistently implemented for all of our students across the town in one space, in preschool and kindergarten, to get them prepared in one group before they move on to grade 1 to their quote neighborhood schools. And we're really addressing that early childhood need for, flush with literacy, number sense, community, and preparedness. Some of our students would be there at the age of 3 in preschool. Some of those students in preschool would be typical students that would be part of the process that we already have in preschools that would be in there. And it would create a great learning community for our youngest learners to then be prepared all in the same space in order to go out to the neighborhood elementary school. So there's definitely pros and cons. It doesn't solve every box that I think the school committee, in the school building committee was hoping to check, i.e. it doesn't address middle school. And I do believe that the third option, which does provide for some growth over time. Right now, we're averaging about, I looked at the enrollment this morning, we have some grades that have 370 students. But they add over time. We get students that come in each year. We just registered this summer up to 80 students new to the district. But kindergarten right now is in the lower end of the 330s, 320s. But very recently we had 350s and 360s. So I think that the leaders of this design have built in what's projected enrollment could be to give a little bit more room. Because unlike the elementary schools that might need one more kindergarten, sometimes you go to 5Ks at Holly Carter, 5Ks at Glover, when we have a high enrollment spike. This space will need to absorb that at one point in time, and we won't have 4 schools to choose from to make that happen. So we do have a little bit of a restricted option base, so building in more capacity with that third option, I think would be very, very helpful, and money well spent now in order to make sure that the future is protected with sort of enrollment in the space provided.
Are you in a, sorry, you guys hear me? Okay. Are you in a position at this time to, like have a quick and dirty to the impact on, bus routes and transportation costs? I assume that like this is different bus stop. Does that necessarily increase routes, or?
It'll have to be its own route. We will have to examine bus transportation being an expense. It's an ongoing operating cost to the district. It's not a walkable school, and all of our K students would probably, the majority of them would be bused unless their parents want to drive them. Right now, almost every kindergarten student gets on a bus to go to school if they live within a certain mileage from the school. We would have to draw the lens very high about whether or not we needed to add any buses to make that work, or we create some synergy around start time. And just for the public to know, our budget did include 1 extra bus this year. That was the recommendation. We have negotiated with our bus company 5 buses that actually carry 15 more students, so we have the longer buses. So we're trying to be more efficient with how we get students to school, and we'll have to tackle that challenge as we go. But transportation will be potentially an added cost to the operating budget.
But we just don't know to what degree.
Correct. I would say that one of the factors of our operating costs were part of our thinking when we chose the pre-K. Pre-K doesn't have the same amount of time with physical education, art, music. The specials are done a little differently, and we can kind of incorporate that a little bit with how we do our kindergarten students. So we have a little flexibility about the specialist teachers that we use, because we did also consider a K-5 school, which could be considered part of our MSBA proposal with it. And we thought that we might be diluting a little bit the resources across 5 elementary schools, that the operating costs might become a factor when we start having more phys ed teachers have to travel, or maybe add more phys ed or add more music in order to make those connections work. So if we were trying to think operating at a high level, not to burden the town with the higher operating costs as well as adding to the debt exclusion as well. So I do think that we need to look into that a little further. I think the pre-KK is a mobile unit that we can kind of pick up and move a little bit more freely than adding a whole new school, generally speaking.
I just want to, before we change topics, follow up on Winston's initial question about sort of how we feel about how this addresses overcrowding. And helpful to hear Superintendent Phelan, sort of your breakdown in which schools this would help and which it wouldn't. You know, sort of the line I've seen, or maybe one of the standards I've seen in evaluating the option, it was included again in the e-newsletter today from the public schools, was considering you know, any building project would need to address a substantial portion of our current space needs. I'm trying to sort of understand if we feel this could do that. You know, let's rule out for a moment, option one, which doesn't meet the requested classroom needs. If we focus on being in either option 2 or 3, which either meets sort of the classroom number request or exceeds by 15% or so the plan for future growth. And does the district feel that while not addressing middle school, not providing middle school relief unless you can do something with the mansion later on the administrative side, are these options potentially doing that? Potentially, substantially addressing some of the space or overcrowding needs that are going on?
I think it creates excellent space relief for elementary schools that have the most overcrowding at this point in time. Cunningham qualifies as a very crowded space. The ability for the district to address the needs of our children, especially our children in preschool, will require a lot of different types of services, require a lot of different types of spaces that are just different than they were 20 years ago. So for me, walking the buildings every week, I think that it does an excellent job of providing that space at the elementary level. And when one would ask, well, if the Glover doesn't have preschool, they just have been losing 4 kindergartens, what would those classrooms turn into? Already we're talking about potentially taking the 9th class away. Every other year, Glover gets a 5th class, and sometimes it goes back to 4. So we could really ensure that those specialist classes have their own space. We have a first grade class in the art room that was originally designed as an art room 20 years ago at the Glover School as an example. And we also have a robust after-school program that needs space. And so dedicating space in each building that we could use for after-school programming is also an advantage. There's no getting around. The middle school doesn't gain any space with this. Their numbers stayed relatively the same. I think as the former principal of the middle school and the person who was actually there when we built it, I think right now we have 4 teams at the 6th grade, and we have 3 teams at 7, 3 teams at 8, in its stretching the space. So I think we can be flexible with that, as Dr. Fish has gone up to 4 teams in grade 6, but we could equally be as flexible and go down back to 3 teams if needed to create space there at the middle school. And the high school, quite frankly, could use the space because high school has been the school that has added the most students over time in the last 5 or 8 years. And having central office, business office, special education office move out of there and utilize different space over locker to provide, well-needed space at the high school. So do I think it works? I think it works. Is it perfect? Does it fit every box? Do we check every box that we were all hoping to check? We don't check the box. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I agree with a lot of what John said. I think the thing I take away from this is as fantastic as the designs were, and appreciate John and Shonali's work on it. I think the question for the site is like, what can fit on the site? Can the site provide some relief, right? And so I think what they've shown is that it absolutely can through this type of model. I think it also shows that upper middle school idea, which is the one project idea that solves all the space overcrowding, that's not going to fit here, right? We saw how much they maximize the space, so there's no cafeteria still with it's 200 less kids, there's no auditorium, there's no full-size gymnasium, there's just like a lot of things that the site cannot fit for that. So that's kind of off the table for this site. I think that's one of the things the school committee was talking about is we really wanted to see multiple little design ideas, they just didn't have the time. But I think my takeaway is that can't fit. The thing that could fit is this pre-K program. And so then it gets into the calculus of, is the pre-K program accomplishing enough of these things? It's from through the cost estimates, it looks like it would be a cheaper project depending on what the land acquisition cost would be. Then you get into the timeline question of you get an SBA money, and so you lose that financial resource. It's all those kind of other implications, obviously, that go along with this to make the calculus of, is this a better project than the one on Dial Road? And ultimately, is the town going to support this project better than the one on Dial Road, right? Like whatever perfect project we might have at any site, the town doesn't vote to approve it, we're getting no space for kids at any site, and we're still suffering with this 5 years from now or whatever it is. So I think, I hesitate here to speak too much because the school committee has not had a discussion on this. Obviously, we just had final discussion last night at school building committee. So we're having a discussion here. I know the timeline is very tight, y'all are trying to make a determination here, but yeah, I think the school committee feels urgency around creating a solution to address a very long-standing problem that Sean and the team has been working on. And so, again, lots of the similar excitements kind of to this parcel that John has expressed.
So I'm glad you brought up Gal Road, Mark. So can we speak about that? I think we have not said, we haven't gotten to really the specifics yet. That is this project or Gal Road. We would not be doing both. So Sean, maybe you have the better grasp on this since you're working on this since day one. The savings, can you speak to the savings versus option 3, max option, versus where you think we'd be right now with the Gal Road project?
Yeah, so the Gal Road project, if you recall, we had it estimated in July of 2024 for 173 million for total project costs. So just keep using that term. After we did follow-on work as school building committee after that into November, where we were able to kind of fine-tune that estimate and do some of the revised design, and we brought it down to 167 million. If you take those costs and just use the standard like 4% escalation, I believe, let me just look at my calculator because I knew this question would come up. Escalating at 4% from 167 million in today's dollars would put it at 181 million dollars. Some of the work we did previously with our OPM was determining our effective rate from MSBA for what the reimbursement would be. So our project reimbursement was 45%, but essentially the effective rate when we take out non-eligible reimbursement items in the design was about 28%. So at 181 million at a 28% reimbursement, which is roughly about 50 million, that total project cost after the reimbursements comes down to 130 million. I could run similar numbers for what we're looking at for option 3, but I just didn't have that readily available right now.
Okay. Are we factoring in any additional costs for the classrooms that are freed at the middle schools to be redesigned? Because if those classes are right now pre-K and kindergarten, I assume there'd be some redesign for a new usage of those spaces in the existing schools.
Sorry, do you mean design at the K-5? You said middle
Yeah,
school.
so let's say you're at Tucker, Tucker gets 4 freed up classrooms.
Yeah.
Those classrooms have housed pre-K and kindergarten for the last few years. Is there any redesign costs for those classrooms to now be used differently?
I don't understand.
But in either project, those costs will happen. So as we're comparing the two things, either you're redesigning because you're pulling out 5th grade, right, for the upper middle school project, right, you'd be pulling out 5th grade to Pierce, and then you'd be pulling out 8th grade. And so you're going to be freeing up space kind of at the K-5s and also freeing up space at the Pierce Middle School in addition. So there might be a little bit more cost because you're dealing with the space issue at Pierce in a way that the pre-K and K is not doing anything at Pierce. You really wouldn't touch Pierce. So it might be a little bit more cost with the upper or the Gow Road project, but it's probably, for the sake of like the conversation here, the costs are probably going to be pretty similar across those two projects. You're going to have to figure out how you redesign those spaces to make them useful in the existing buildings.
Do you have a back of the envelope and an understanding of the operating delta in both scenarios yet? It sounds like it's probably a little bit early for that, but we've discussed at length operating is potentially substantially lower on La Brea versus what operating increase might be on Guile Road. But it sounds like the transportation might not totally be there yet on La Brea in terms of like understanding what that might look like. do you have any sense of magnitude at this point?
Not at a very high level, I would say that transportation is gonna be an issue whether you go with either project, because you're gonna have a separate building
True, okay,
in order
yep.
to address the needs. The pre-KK will need to be driven. Your 7-8 students don't quote have to be unless they, at all, so you could actually, if you went to that, we probably wouldn't do that to our families. The mobile unit that is the pre-K comes with an administrator, it comes with all the services that are already there, and will go right to the pre-KK school. The teachers in grade 7 and 8 will just go to that school and transfer over. But again, you're talking about those specialist positions. How do you don't wanna have everybody be, do you want all your phys ed, music and art be 0.7, or do they share schools, do they go across? There'll begin to be those types of choices that you'll have to make in order to maximize the service delivery but minimize the costs as best we can. And having gone through this in the previous district, there is somewhat of an increase in operating costs, but the teachers are already there.
Yeah.
The paraprofessionals are already there. You might have to add a nurse because you're adding a building. You're gonna add some custodians because you're adding square footage. You're gonna add some things, but generally speaking, I think that we're moving sets of people that do the same work somewhere else to a new space. And then there'll be some costs, surrounding that.
Yeah, I just think as we go forward in this dialogue, just keeping in mind sort of the corollary operating expenditures, just keeping pace with it along the way and not having to have people do their own guesswork on what would be.
Well, to that point, I think there's, moving forward, that we're probably gonna need to start doing more concrete numbers around the operating piece. So that we're sharing, if we are to move forward with this pre-K and kindergarten at La Brea, assuming that we are able to acquire the property, that we are doing a budget analysis of the additional, either teachers or custodians, or the impacts on the overall school and town budget. I think that's gonna be a really key point to us presenting this to our residents and our parents. Like, we're gonna need to have a really complete picture of what this means long term, not only the relief that we get at the elementary schools, and I thank you, Superintendent Phelan, for saying us having an early childhood center, the impacts of that, where it can be really a launch pad for our young people going into 1st and 2nd grade, and being able to really focus on that population of students in one space with all the resources there to really give them a great start. That impact, as well as what it will cost long term and how we will be paying for it. I think that's an important piece for us to be having as well.
Any other thoughts you guys want to share, just on a general feeling about the quality of the pre-K and K experience? You've already touched on it, so maybe there's nothing more to add. And Mark, I understand the school committee. Well, I guess there was some earlier dialogue on that option too. So I don't know if there's just any other color you want to share around the enthusiasm or not of that option.
So from the leadership team perspective, there's a lot of enthusiasm for the pre-KK program. With the asterisk that our educators will miss their colleagues and they'll miss the level of students in their building. It's a real big deal to be in kindergarten and elementary school. So, but there is, when people start to think about the trajectory of what a student's journey would be from pre-KK into his neighborhood school and into middle and high school. The leadership team had a lot of good energy around that. They feel like it's a good idea. They feel like it's good for children. And if we're going to have a break point and add a different destination on that journey physically by having another stop, whether it's 7, 8 or pre-KK, they really like that pre-KK idea. So there's good energy around it. I haven't gone out and spoken to staff specifically about it. That's why we have it in the update. We're trying to let folks know from the staffing perspective that we're keeping this in front of them all the time. We're being very transparent. This is being considered. This is going down another step this week, and to keep them in tune to what is going on, so they don't feel surprised if at some point in the fall or at some point this year this might be moving forward in a concrete way. And at some point, we're really gonna have to survey that a little bit and get some feedback from our staff as well, from our parents. That this condensed process, that when Sean kind of wrote down the timeline that you've responded to, it's pretty amazing that this amount of work got done in 1 month. And at the point where we need to include more voices in this, we'll want to make sure that we get that from our educators and from our families.
I was gonna ask about that, so can I just do that now? I was actually trying to bucket my questions into sort of pre-property acquisition considerations like costs, and then what do we do if we get the property? But you open the window, Superintendent. So just on the community engagement piece, and we don't need to map that out tonight, but I did want to ask, you know, knowing you all would be here, if you just had any early visions on what that might look like, and frankly, who might drive that? You know, whether it's school committee, district, school building committee, I don't know, other. Just wanted to, while we're all together, you know, I don't know the next time we're all together, wanted to just open the floor to any early thoughts on, you know, so that folks the next couple weeks, August, September, can kind of hit the ground running on that piece potentially. You know, invite any thoughts on, you know, what that engagement might look like.
I mean, it can take several different ways. First of all, communicating it and making sure people are reading it and it's in front of folks on a regular basis. We could do it through our PTO meetings with our elementary schools. Pre-KK is the initial part that we really want to discuss. And we do that with staff meetings with our staff as well. I think it's going to be really important to meet at the elementary level. The hard part about the pre-KK is that the families that are going to be impacted aren't here yet. They maybe just moved in, or they may just thinking about,
yeah,
you know,
other than the younger siblings,
yeah. Then when we do the 7-8, you're going to have a real wide body of folks that would want to weigh in on that, with third grade parents and fourth grade parents, as they envision what their 7th and 8th grade would look like. So we'll have to be thoughtful. We have a preschool source where we can identify our 3-year-old parents, and we can kind of get that up and running through our preschool context. But I envision an elementary heavy kind of conversation when it becomes about program and impact on students and families. And then the larger audience, obviously, when it comes to the financial purchasing of the property and the cost of it, as Sean just explained it, that's going to be a town meeting discussion, and how do we educate folks around that prior to any votes or prior to any town meeting forums, so people are well informed. There's going to be some questions that might not be just fully answered, and that might be hard for folks, but that's, I'd rather tell the truth and say, I don't have an answer to that question, than kind of run something and say, well, it just might look like this, or, you know, we're going to have many answers, but we might not have every answer because we're working on a condensed timeline. And it's a great opportunity. If it works, great, and if it doesn't, Sean's team has been doing a great job with the original proposal, and there's something in place that's already has a process with MSBA and a connection, and that's a good news story. The MSBA engagement in being in Module 1, we're getting ready for Module 2, is a really big deal in the town. So this is a good news story on both fronts. We have options.
I know Sean has his hand up, but I'll jump in before him. I think, yeah, I mean, I think all of the above is in terms of who's involved. I will highlight the school building committee because I think they've been kind of given the charge by the town to say, you know, help drive the work towards addressing what has been acknowledged as an overcrowding problem in Milton Public Schools. So, you know, the school department lives with it every day. The school committee works with the school department, oversees that, and interacts with families who deal with that every day. The school building committee, I think Sean has done a tremendous job of like hosting information sessions about the Guile Road project as that was going along, right? What are the different things? It's not just Sean, it's the whole team. It's, you know, many years in which they were doing that. I think that will continue. I think the other thing that this initial new idea around pre-KK, you know, unfortunately the timing was towards the end of the school year. Lots of people were busy. Summer, everybody's kind of gone. So I appreciate the superintendent kind of trying to put it on people's radar. I think we'll get a lot more engagement in the fall. And if this board decides to move forward with kind of procurement, and that occurs, I think it gives us really good opportunities for kind of visioning sessions with families to say, like, what did you and your family and your child really love about the
the pre-K experience or the computer experience you're building, like what it seemed like is missing, like what are the things we wanna get out of those, past positive and learnings that we've had, that we can take within the design and like actually help inform some more details of this, which Molly and John have done a great job. But there are lots of ways in which that kind of design will be tweaked and adjusted based upon that kind of level of detailed input, which is not there within the process of the post procurement kind of decision.
Sean and then John. Go ahead, Sean.
Thanks. And just in response to Mr. Oversheimer's comment, about enthusiasm for this, I got to admit, having the potential of having full day preschool as a component of this project, I think is a big win for any parent that's experienced half day preschool. You know what I mean? Dropping off and picking up really quick is never really that much fun. So I think if we can offer that as part of this project, I think it's a really big win. But the idea of the students coming together at an early age, I think is a very good thing. But similarly, just to contrast that at Gow Road, the intention of that was to create an educational campus for 7th and 8th graders along with high schoolers. So that feeling of community, I understand it for the younger generation that would be there, but you also get that as part of the other project. And then the last thing that was kind of alluded to too is for this facility, will probably take 2 to 3 years before it opens, or we could construct it and open it. And the majority of the parents that would be able to experience this may not be living in the town right now, and the students that are part of this wouldn't be able to. Whereas Gal Road, 2 to 3 years out, students that are in the elementary schools would be able to experience it. With this entire effort, I appreciate everyone's help and assistance on this. We're just excited to do something. You know what I mean? So thank you for your time tonight.
Sean. Mr. Driscoll.
Yes, I'd like to thank the school building committee for switching gears and doing such a great job.
John, I think you gotta get a little closer to your microphone.
Hello,
Yep.
can you hear me now?
Yep.
I just want to thank the school building committee for switching gears and getting this thing where it is now. Really appreciate it. Mr. O'Rourke and his group have been at this for a lot of years. And believe me, I wasn't one of the believers, but all you have to do is drive down Edge Hill Road on Saturday and Sunday and see all the mothers and fathers and all the young kids in the carriages, knowing we're going to need these. And I appreciate you working so hard. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
On the program piece that Sean just brought up, can you, my kid is obviously very far out of pre-K. Can you break down the difference in, are we currently offering full day pre-K and kindergarten, and do we intend to offer full day pre-K and kindergarten at the new site?
The intention is not to have full day pre-K for all students at site. There's enough room for that. That would be doubling the size. It would be that some of our half-day programming could turn into full-day programming if we wanted to, but that might limit the amount of folks that would be able to access it.
But just to be clear to the public, we do already have to make concurrent across the district.
Yes.
But not pre-K.
That's correct.
Not pre-K.
Yeah. So, and just to remind folks that preschool is a legal mandate for students who reach the age of 3 who have been diagnosed with a disability that needs to be serviced by public schools. And some of those classrooms are full-day classrooms, given the needs of the children. And some of those programs, service deliveries are half-day. And some of those half-day programs, we invite students that are not on IEPs to join them in order to create a classroom that's robust and a learning environment. There's a lot of different learning styles. That's where our preschool support comes in for the public that can get into that and get in, have their child at least have a half-day experience. We have one full-day preschool class at the Tucker that was created probably about 15 years ago. That's the only, that's not really part of the state mandated preschool. That's just for the community to use as one full-day option. That we would love to expand if we had space, but we don't know, look at that much space to be able support more students in that. So there's a little bit of a difference in those two programs.
Any other questions, points, members?
Can I just make one? Thank you for all of the work on this, it's tremendous. I think one of the things that I've been hearing from the community is kind of about the trade-offs, right? Like nothing's a perfect solution. And, you know, thinking about the schools as being really the gem of our town. And I think what I'm hearing from folks is they want us to make sure we're thinking about not just a fast solution, right? But something that, you know, is long-term and sustainable, and it would be great to see, and it sounds like, you know, through these kind of different levels, right, that we could come up with something that would service both, right? To immediately, you know, to more readily help with overcrowding, but also to be more of a long-term solution.
I would like to think that this is a pretty, both scenarios will provide. I think the 7-8 might provide more capacity for long term and make differences at every level of the district. So, you know, keep that here for sure. Sean and his team have done a great job of making sure that that they're checking all of those boxes in a very long-term view. So that's so much appreciated. The question becomes, this is a unique opportunity. So if we take something that's just a little less than in terms of capacity, that provides a unique opportunity, and take advantage of it. The savings of the money, whether it's 10 million to 30 million, may be a big deal, but may not be. Is this good for children? Is it good for the families? Is it good for the town? Is it good for the long term of the town? And I think it's a good option to explore more deeply, and I think that the programming that we, just one setting with our wonderful design team, have come up with a really unique way of engaging young learners. You know, for example, like this, we don't want students to go up and down 3 floors, so the cafeteria will be done on every floor in a very unique way. The libraries will be done differently because we don't want little legs going up and down 3 floors, so we'll put certain things. So we can be really creative with that space to address the needs of our young learners. And I think it would be, either program will be, serve the town well.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Just a timeline question. This might be for Sean, Mr. O'Rourke, and Nick. I'm not sure. It's sort of an MSBA. Any views on? My instinct is, you know, MSBA related decisions might drive our timeline a little bit around further evaluation of this scenario. In other words, I think there's gotta be, is there a time, you know, in the coming months where the town will need to decide sort of, you know, if Labray is acquired, are we pursuing school there through the MSBA program or not? Which inevitably will sort of, to me, that seems like kind of a final decision time. You know, how long can that go on where we're not decided on that? You know, is there a view on sort of when we should really have that figured out?
So right now, the town, through the MSBA process and through that project, can study a K-5 for 495 students or a grade 7-8 building for 670 students at Labray today. That is included as part of the MSBA program. You can look at as many sites or as few sites as you want. So we have an OPM on board. They're preparing designer procurement process. The designer will be selected and contracted by the end of October. So that work related to K-5, grade 7-8 could start looking at Laborays right away by then. To look at Labray for pre-KK with MSBA partnership, that is an indeterminate timeline because the initial conversations we've had is they've said, if you acquire the site and you're still interested in pre-KK, come talk to us after you've acquired the site and if that's true. So now we're looking at least a couple months before we can engage in those conversations, and we don't really know where they're going to say go back to. Are they going to say go back to the beginning of eligibility period and we're forming a school building committee again and doing other initial stuff? or will they let us kind of move more quickly through those preliminaries? So the exact timeline is hard to tell, like when we can have a final decision on whether we can do pre-KK with MSB partnership. It would be a delay, but it's not clear, and I don't know when we have a better answer from them on as to how long of a delay that might be.
I was going to ask perhaps you and Sean to work on a best shot at sort of a timeline of key dates, decision points over the coming months. I can't quite tell if that's a reasonable ask yet, or if more information is needed. But if it would seem helpful for upcoming discussions to sort of have a visual like that.
Sure. I mean, and we can kind of plug in what we'd expect in kind of not a worst case, but in kind of a longest duration for an MSBA project that would be pre-KK. So we can at least work on that, and maybe there's a way to leverage a lot of the work that's already been done to skip some other stuff and try to move more effectively or efficiently with MSBA, but that's going to be in their court. They have a very deliberate, methodical process that they want districts to adhere to, and the idea of a district coming to them after we've already signed an agreement saying we're studying certain things to come back, and that really throws their program out of sync, so they don't, it just would be, I think, a lengthy process.
Sean, you got your hand up, but I also have a question for you. Can you share the difference in size between the two projects? What would be a Labouré and what the 7-8 would be a Kyle?
And Jana Shinali, feel free to correct me where I go wrong. So the project at Labouré numbers is about 86,000 square feet. I believe it's, let's say 45,000 of new build and 41,000 of renovation of the existing building. And, I'll pause to let John Arishnali correct me if I went wrong there.
It's slightly more than that, but you're close. It's slightly more than that, but you're close. Yes, very close.
Working off the top of my head. And then and I've got the construction cost up for Guile Road when we did that. Guile Road square footage area for the middle school was 137,000 square feet, and the preschool was 24,000 square feet, so roughly 161,000 square feet. Keep in mind with the middle school, there are additional very large areas, auditorium, much larger gymnasium, full-size cafeteria, which drives some of that size up. So when you're looking for it, just keep that in comparison.
Thank you.
The one thing though, I just want to touch base on Mr. Obersheimer's question on the MSBA timeline and Mr. Milano's comments too. So the middle school option was 660 students, not 670. But the overall working with MSBA this past year and a half that we've been working with them, we've done our best to be ahead of them or go as quickly as we possibly can. For example, in Module 1, we had 270 days to submit all our documentation to them. We submitted it in 90 days, and it didn't do anything for us. So just from experience through this past year, I wouldn't anticipate them accommodating us wanting to move fast because they haven't done it already.
No other questions or comments from the members. This does not require a motion, more of an update for us as well as the community. Thank you all for joining us. Well done, but much more to come. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So we move to item 8, discussion approval of the special town meeting warrant. Mr. Milano, if you want to walk us through the items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We went through these articles a bit in our last meeting, so I'll pull them up and we can walk through where they stand. So the first article on the agenda is an appropriation related to water main system and seeking additional funding from the MWRA to take on additional infrastructure improvement work. DPW Engineering has identified an additional $2.2 million in projects that they contemplate bidding and constructing over the next 2 construction seasons, that'd be summer 27 and summer 28. This appropriation would draw down from our pot of interest-free loan money that is available to the town through the MWRA system. So we can acquire money at 10 years, no interest, to improve the water main systems. And we have, through DPW Engineering, a recommendation to draw down on 2.2 million of that, again, for additional water main projects over the next 2 construction seasons.
Questions from members?
All right, the next article is to transfer surplus bond proceeds. So surplus bond proceeds is when we borrow money for projects that we ultimately don't need the money for. So it's not only town meeting authorization to borrow money, but we did bring the money in. So it is sitting in a bank account, to put it in those terms. And we cannot use it for the purpose for which we borrowed it for, because the projects are complete and the funding is no longer needed. In order to use that funding now, we need a town meeting vote to move it and apply it to a different capital project. And the rules are that if the surplus proceeds are less than $50,000, we can apply it to the debt service costs. And if you recall, we had a vote several months ago where we applied surplus proceeds to existing debt service costs. If the surplus proceeds are greater than $50,000, we trigger that requirement for town meeting vote. The 2 projects that are complete we no longer need are $350,000 from a DPW locker room and cemetery garage project from about 8 or 10 years ago, and the other is for what had been expected improvements that were necessary for the Pine Tree Brook flood control dam off of Unquity, $74,000. So we propose, the way we teed this article up was not to do additional work, but rather to defray the cost of a project that's already been approved by the town meeting but not been paid for yet. So we have a replacement fire engine that we expect to arrive early winter, November, December 2026. So we propose to apply these savings or this surplus proceeds to that cost. So that $1.1 million fire engine, we won't borrow $1.1 million, we'll borrow less $350,000, less $74,000. So the maximum that we would issue debt for that project is $676,000. So we put this money to work on another capital project that's expected to be delivered this year. So we would close out these projects and do that to the books. All right, the next one is the adjustment to the reserve fund with the additional state aid approved for the fiscal 27 budget. That delta is about $363,000, and we recommend appropriating that into the reserve fund to be used for extraordinary or anticipated costs in fiscal 27. I will note one anticipated potential cost may be operating costs to fund Library for the balance of this fiscal year if we take ownership, if obviously we reach agreement to acquire and the town votes to acquire. We will have a cost to manage that facility for the rest of this fiscal year that we have not budgeted for, so there is a potential place for this money to be used for already, but we just recommend moving it to the reserve fund and use it if necessary. Hopefully, with a good budget year, don't present it.
Thank you.
We included in the packet, and just for the members and for the public, and we shared this with the warrant committee too, is it's more of a kind of a template acquisition article, just to give folks something to think about in terms of Library. So this is just a pretty standard warrant article that was drafted by KP Law to acquire property. This has the specifics related to Library in it. Some blanks that we would need to fill in would be, the purposes that we're acquiring it for, general municipal purposes, including but not limited to, based on this conversation, we would add school purposes to that. And that would be sufficient to cover it. And I'll note that, it is, the recommendation is contingent upon, debt exclusion vote. So the language here, until the town shall vote to exclude the amounts needed to repay any bonds or notes, would mean that a debt exclusion vote would be required, for this to proceed. But again, there's more blanks to fill in, but this is broadly what that will look like. And I also included, again, just to give context of what the ballot question might look like if we had to put it on the ballot. What is different from debt exclusions to operating overrides is that the amount is not included in the ballot question. So it doesn't provide a lot of context. This is the state mandated language. You're asking the voters to exempt from Prop 2.5 the cost to pay for the bonds to acquire a lot array. That's the amount of detail that they'll get, which makes the information sharing and the communications around it leading to the town meeting so good, because that's where the town meeting vote sets the limitations on how much money. The ballot question is much more general than specific.
Is there anything we should discuss tonight about, like, I mean, just from a timing perspective, right? Like, this would go to warrant committee. Actually, I'm not. Maybe I should just ask, like, what would the sequence be in terms of finalizing this potential article to get to warrant committee for the fall?
The only edits to this version of the article, and the articles all could be voted approval. It's subject to town council's final edits. Would be to add language later in. General municipal purposes included but not limited to school purposes. We would certainly want to add that now.
But maybe I can save you. Maybe I can simplify my question. Like, is there anything else that would be helpful for us to weigh in on for readiness for this one? It seems like not. But I'm
No, and I would say the board will need a subsequent meeting between now and the end of September. I mean, the end of August, excuse me, if and when any such agreement is reached with Library to finalize this. Sorry, that's right.
Okay, my question was not clear. Yeah.
CPC.
So thank you. I have not drafted that article. The CPC project appropriation that's contemplated is to, looking for assistance with council on that one, is to appropriate $300,000 to the Tucker Playground project. So we have draft language we're just working with council on. So that's prepared to be approved for the warrant, subject to town council. School building committee. Should have asked John to stay on the call. So, to the question about MSBA, non-MSBA, this is a proposed appropriation for the school building committee to study and design a project at library. We have an existing appropriation of $1.5 million for the school building committee under the MSBA auspices to design a school project related to a K-5 or a 7-8. That appropriation is very specific to the MSBA program and that type of a project. In order for the school building committee to study and design a non-MSBA project, whatever that is, they do need an appropriation. We think about $1.2 million to be sufficient to get it to a point where that project can then come back to the voters into town meeting for full approval for the total project budget a year or whatever that timeline is from now. So the question here to the board, and it says something about school building committee that hasn't been submitted, is whether we would want to put an article on the warrant to give the school building committee appropriation to commence work once a decision has been made, MSBA or not MSBA. Otherwise, they will need to wait until a future town meeting for a future appropriation to proceed. So it would mean there are two appropriations out there for the school building committee to design two schools. We know they wouldn't do that, but I just do note that might be a little funky or just a little strange, but if the intention is to have them, once a decision related to MSBA is made, to just start working, it would be in the interest to have an appropriation available. So that's, I don't know that I provided prior context. context when I shared this, but that's kind of the decision that we have to make at this point related to an additional appropriation for the school building committee.
So we'd have two appropriations for two sites, but that does not mean that both funds are being spent.
Because one set of funds can't be spent on, it's not like you can't take Guile Road, the Guile Road appropriation and apply it to library and vice versa.
Yeah, and I didn't put in language, but there could be additional language that says, provided that, you know, no funds shall be expended if the town is proceeding with the project with MSBA or something, just to kind of clarify that. I wasn't really good at wordsmithing like that, but that would be another way to kind of build a little protection on that, but yes, there would be two separate appropriations. The school building committee is going to start using the MSBA one now until we stop and go in a different direction.
Seems like we need the appropriation. I'm sort of thinking about whether, but like the explanation or messaging would be really important for town meeting. And I think I land where you do, that maybe that needs to happen like around some presentation or something, and maybe not through the actual article language, because that it just seems like there's a couple things in flux to try to accomplish that in the article, is my instinct. Is that sort of where, I'm sorry to interrupt you, where you landed in not trying to write that in?
Yeah, that's why I left it as just a regular appropriation, and that we wouldn't spend $2.7 million designing it, we would spend one appropriation or the other amount.
I think we just need to do some communication, to the town, that we would do something crazy. Whether that's some kind of presentation or language in here, and
So we would work on how we would actually present the article at town meeting.
I mean, to get to, there's some nuance here in terms of the timing in which this would be spent, I think. Like, if you just read it, it might suggest, like, at any point, like, this spending will occur, when in reality, I think it would be, we need the appropriation, but something might trigger that to happen. I don't know, I mean,
my gut says lean towards wordsmithing something in here.
Because this doesn't
Oh,
reference the current, like, Guile Road appropriation, this is just for library.
Yes, it references library obviously by address, so the money can only be spent to design something at that location, so that is one kind of set of parameters on it. But otherwise, it doesn't have any limitation.
I just worry we get into a point where people are like wanting to get up and wordsmith at town meeting, and just like that could take days.
So what I could anticipate, right, or the question I would have to try to anticipate any language aimed at restricting the expenditure against Guile Road, right? Would it be a question for Darren or Nick, do you know off the top of your head? Can you insert language in an article authorizing an appropriation that also prohibits the actual, I'm getting tired, so I'm losing words. That can you like halt or preclude the encumbrance of funds appropriated that have already been appropriated in another, can you reference the other appropriation?
So we reference the Guile Road and appropriation.
Yeah, right.
So the article,
It might be a
the article is
crazy-
for the library itself,
Yeah.
but we would reference the existing appropriation for the Guile Road.
Yeah,
I think okay with that, and hoping that we don't confuse folks.
right,
Because right now, we're only talking about one. It's the
Right.
one, it's the one that we're referencing.
So the Guile Road appropriation had provided that no money shall be expended until the town has been approved by the MSBA, broadly language to that, so I can work with council. I should also note that it's just a draft motion, that this is the warrant committee's
Yeah.
motion, so we can prepare and submit to them proposed language, we don't need that now, the article, which was the non-bolded portion, was sufficient for submitting an article. And we can, work with council to propose language to this effect.
I'm not proposing the language
I will,
right now.
I'll let the attorneys handle it.
Yeah.
Alright, on our list would be the Atherton Fire Station, so as I noted in an email to the select board, the Fire Station Building Committee met last week, and just in terms of their overall progress on the design is not at a place where they would be prepared to have a cost estimate and a well-prepared design for the town meeting's deliberation at the fall town meeting. I think we raised expectations a little bit higher than we perhaps should have, that they would have been able to turn around from, approval in May to come back in the fall. It was a lot of work to be proposed to be done in a short amount of time, and we're just not there. So where they landed was, that is a project that will require a ballot question. So the timeline that they discussed, again, would be the select board's decision, but, February, March, special town meeting to take up the appropriation for Atherton, followed by including the ballot question on the annual town election to avoid special election costs. We would incur, the expense and the time related to the special town meeting. But if we were able to hit that kind of threshold and timeline, the project should be able to start at around the same time we would have started anyway if it came to the fall town meeting. So there isn't a significant delay around the project at all, but it does mean a revised timeline in order for it to be ready. The other benefit is, depending on when that town meeting would be called, they would be able to put the project out to bid, have the contractors bid to say, this is what the cost would be, with the construction contract ready to be signed upon town meeting and the ballot question approval. So it would give a very clear specificity as to cost. But just is not ready for the fall town meeting.
Is the readiness is that just design timing?
Yeah, the design process didn't really kick off until,
It was aggressive. It was an aggressive design timeline.
to have contracts done, amendments approved, work start. It was a fast turnaround, and we probably should have messaged that a little bit carefully. So they are on a non-fall town meeting timeline at this point.
Let's revisit later just about doing special town meeting, that would entail.
The next three on the agenda are short-term rentals and related articles. As was alluded to in public comment, the planning board feels more time is necessary to work on that article, related to how short-term rentals would be regulated, what kind of level of effort that would, and work requiring that would put on staff and the various departments that would be responsible for implementation of that regulatory regime. So that is not necessarily a zoning article that needs to come from the planning board, but they feel that more work is necessary to have that ready for a future time.
Can I ask you a question on that one?
Yes.
That's a planning board, so we don't have any influence over that at all.
For them to put it forward or the language?
So it's a non-zoning, it's not an amendment to the zoning bylaws, so it could come from,
Anywhere.
it could come from citizens petition, it could come from the select board, it could come from the Board of Health. So it could be submitted by any authority, but the planning board has taken the lead on trying to work on it and spent a decent amount of time on it to this point. But it doesn't necessarily have to emanate from it.
I'm not saying we should do it, I'm just
I
curious about
do
the
think the
process.
reason that they've surfaced for why they think it's not ready is a good reason for them to take it back and share it, because there are a lot of town departments that they need to have buy-in and input from for this to be an effective bylaw.
Well, so I think the two town departments that are being called on to weigh in on this, and practically speaking, like they would bear some of the operational burden, being the inspection department and the Board of Health. It's pretty tricky in government getting, what concerns me is there's like two separate departments with two separate leads. And it's like, who will be having mitigate and manage and ensure that something is going to get to us by the next town meeting. Because I think it's fine, it makes sense that we have to think about implementation, but like we need to prioritize getting this done because people are concerned about it, and it also supports, our goals for maintaining housing stock for residents and impacts affordability. Like I don't want this to turn into people not doing anything because it got complicated to think through implementation. And these two departments report to you, not the planning board.
I think one element here is we're trying to get to a regulatory regime that authorizes this for owner occupants. So as a policy choice, there's a policy choice to just say, no, these are not permitted at all. And that would be a cleaner, easier to prepare bylaw. But if we are going to regulate, then it becomes a bit more challenging. So, but I guess my question to this board is, do you want to just prohibit them, or are you more comfortable with a regulatory that should limit them and cut down the number of them and only allow them in certain circumstances? But the other alternative is we say, as a policy option in the town, we actually don't want these in the town at all. So I don't know that we really talked about that as an option. I don't know if the board's interested in that, but that would be an easier pathway from a bylaw perspective.
What have other towns done in our position, right? Like, we're not the only, I mean, it's potentially a revenue source for us. I think people are gonna do it anyway, whether it's legal, but whether it's regulated or not. And, these things have been around for, definitely over a decade, right? Like, other municipalities in the state have figured out how to do this.
And they've done it with requiring annual inspections, or alternatively, they've passed a bylaw and given the regulatory authority to the Board of Health and said, you go write the regulations now. So it's doing kind of half the work and getting a bylaw in place that authorizes regulations that then turns that to another board to do a future process. So we've looked at both versions of kind of slimmed down that says some other board will write regulations once this bylaw is through, or alternatively kind of putting more into the crux of the bylaw and less into future regulations. But that's been kind of mixed across the board in terms of across different cities and towns in terms of which happens. But
I to try to give you feedback to your question, my view would, I haven't studied what draft was kicking around like deeply. I was sort of waiting for it to come to us, but my view and the view I've heard from residents is would be to proceed under like a regulated framework. And my instinct was the bylaw was pretty far along, and it seemed like Halmunger did a fair amount of like engagement on it too, which was nice to see. So just want to answer your question. I think it's I think it's worth whatever effort we're having to do here to try to push that along.
So what would be next steps to push it along? Like, is there still a way to try to keep this for fall? Could we meet with the planning board and how can we?
I don't think fall.
It's not happening.
My understanding of the timeline is that warrant committee needs in early September drafts of articles to hit,
articles now in order to hit to finish their review by
They would need to submit as is, which they're not comfortable with, and I don't know if they have either partnership or buy-in or whatever input they need from Board of Health or the planning department to make this work.
Yep.
But
As long as, I just wanna keep some tension on this, back to Megan's point, that we wanna just like, keep this moving forward.
yeah, so I think we're talking about making this very clear that we would like this at spring.
Okay.
At the end.
Great.
I don't think we want to, as a board,
No,
just
we can't
out
do it
and,
now, yeah.
say we're
Yeah.
gonna restrict.
Right. No, I think there's a lot of reasons to make the money from it while we're here.
Do we have our marching orders? We'll work on that, thank you. We already talked about the Milton Village Local Historic District, and the last article, which again we talked about at our prior meeting, is the one related to MBTA communities to amend the affordability from 10% to 15%. Now that we have an economic feasibility analysis that defends that 15% number, so again, more of a housekeeping, more an article to do there. So we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 articles, assuming that the two related to library are needed. So the action from the board tonight would be to approve those 7 articles for submission to the warrant, subject to final edits by town council.
If there are no more questions, I'll take the motion.
I wanna make sure, you gotta make the motion.
I was just seeing if I had the right tally of which
Yeah.
ones are going.
That's what I was trying to figure out
Can
too.
we just-
The math isn't mathing here.
A through F on the agenda, and the additional article related to MBTA communities.
So A through F and L. A through F and L.
L's not listed, so I would just give that
So
one by
second,
name.
right?
But that's,
Well, we keep K?
4, 5.
No.
I just count
A through
6.
F,
Am I wrong?
H, I,
Yeah,
J.
A,
Yeah,
B,
you gotta
C,
and then add
oh,
L.
D. There it is. I got it. I can do it. You want me to do it? Move to approve the following warrant articles for inclusion in the special town meeting warrant. A, B, C, D, E, F, and O.
It sounds so curious on YouTube. Motion made.
Second.
Motion seconded. Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Overshower.
Yes.
Ms. Nolan.
Yes.
Ms. Hagerty.
Yes.
And myself, yes. I think we're skipping item 9, ballot questions. We don't have any of those. Yes, now, item 10. This is not much for us to discuss, it's more an idea of process. We have received the responses for the RFP tonight, for the East Milton Fire Station RFP. Tonight, we're not gonna be having further discussion, just wanna discuss the process of it. So, we have a rubric that was sent around by Mr. Milano with the scoring system. We are all to take the RFPs back, review, score the rubric for ourselves, submit it to Mr. Milano, and then at our next meeting, we will discuss those scores and also our next steps, whether it's to award, whether we would like to have more information, whatever the select board feels should happen at the East Milton Fire Station. It's not necessarily the last item on that, but it is the next step for us in the process.
If I went to Mr. Milano.
As soon as possible, I guess. Before the next meeting. Yes. Before the next meeting.
Prior to the
Long,
vote,
a week before, at least a week before.
that would work well, September 1st.
Got it.
The only other thing I would mention is if the board was interested in conducting interviews with each of the proposers prior to doing evaluations, if yes, then we should schedule that to take place prior to conducting the evaluations. So that is, we allowed for it in the RFP, we did not require it, the board's not required to do it. You can evaluate based on materials that were provided.
Can we request interviews after the evaluations?
I will need to do the homework around that. I can
did things now, that would require us doing it within, depending on vacation time, some very limited spots before our next meeting.
And why does it need to happen before next meeting? It's just to stay on
Because next
track.
meeting we would be sharing
Okay.
our scores.
Or you can push that time to the back. If we wanted to accommodate interviews, and certainly can push that time to the back.
Do the members feel that we need interviews, or are we comfortable with reviewing the applications and scoring?
I don't wanna go with someone on that site without like having a conversation.
Okay, one for interview.
It's a manageable number too, you know.
Yeah.
2 for interview.
You
I
know,
mean, I could go either way.
On the fence. John, how do you feel?
I'll go for the interviews.
All right, it's 3 for interviews. So, yes, can we still individually look at the applications?
Oh, yeah, yes. And the, just for anybody interested, all the proposals are provided on the town. It's on our bid page, which may be a bit tricky to find, so we'll send out a news announcement just to where they are, but all 3 proposals are available online, for anybody's public documents.
Can we right now select a week where we feel that we can do the interviews?
not sure there is one in August, but we can try.
Okay.
I can't do it in August. I can read, yeah.
Can we start with this?
I know, right? As usual, right? I can do the week after September 1st. Or the week of September 1st, can you just?
Can you do August, like Monday, August 31st, the week of that?
Oh yeah, I can do Monday, August 31st.
Okay, so that last week of August, first week of September.
Yeah.
Those
Good with
days
me.
Yeah,
would work?
yeah.
All right,
That just like week of September, August 24th is a nightmare.
all right, so do we would need to have this open meeting?
Regular select board meeting.
So that'd be September 1st.
Sure, keep it to a Tuesday night.
September 1st, is okay?
Yeah.
John, is September 1st okay for you?
Yes.
All right, September 1st interviews. Our candidates.
Okay, so we will reach out to them to schedule that, we'll give them 15 minutes for a presentation and 20 to 30 minutes for questions.
For the questions, for us as a board, do we want to craft specific questions so that we are asking each candidate the same questions and not doing this ad hoc? So
I think we have to do uniform questions.
uniform questions, which we will need to create unless we have those in.
We can draft some, but if any specific question that members would like to include on the list for consideration, just shoot them to us, but we can also work on some of those questions.
So we'll craft questions for the September 1st meeting of the East Milton Fire Station candidates for move forward.
Cool. Exciting.
Oh, sorry, good catch, that, we can't do that night, sorry.
What?
September 1st is the state primary,
Son of a.
Does it, I mean,
so you can do the night before or the night after, but it is a
August
conflict
31st,
and we shouldn't meet that night. We try to avoid doing that.
August 31st?
Yeah.
John, August 31st?
Yes.
All right. Monday,
Thank
August
you, Len.
31st.
Good catch.
7 p.m. Item 11, vote to determine the maximum useful life of capital equipment approved at 2026 annual town meeting. Mr. Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for capital equipment, when we go to issue debt for it, the maximum useful life is 5 years unless the select board votes to set a longer useful life. We already do this process through the capital process where anytime we take capital requests in, we request for departments to submit their proposed useful life, and then the capital committee makes a recommendation of their useful life to the town meetings, which is then voted by the town meeting. So we're really looking for a ratification, essentially what the capital committee and town meeting have done now to set the following useful life for the following capital equipment as displayed on screen. So this is bus, front end loaders, skid steers, network hardware, any kind of capital equipment item. So this is the maximum life that we can issue debt for these with, and we do try to trim that down where possible. The idea is you don't wanna borrow money for a front end loader for 20 years if it's only gonna last you 10 years, and then you're paying for debt on something that maybe doesn't last the full 20. In that case, a front end loader should last 20. It's just an example. You wanna keep those bond terms roughly in line with where we think the equipment will last. So we try to keep it below what the actual useful life will be, so that again, we're not carrying those debt costs too long and past their useful life.
And these are in place until they get changed again?
Correct.
If no further questions, I'll take a motion.
I would like to move that the select board determines the maximum useful life of capital equipment approved at the 2026 annual town meetings shall be displayed, shall be displayed on the chart in the column labeled useful life vote at town meeting.
Motion made,
Second.
motion seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
And me, yes. Alright. Item 12, committee reports. I feel like we heard from the school building committee, but Pete, is anything?
I think we've covered it.
Alright. John, airplane noise.
Yes, we met a week or two ago. It was very productive. People, they're looking for some instrument reading, right, Nick? That they need, try to put something together to share. Massport and FAA. They said the devices have been around the town, so they're just looking for the readings on them. And they'd like to appoint another member for the airplane, if you have anybody applying.
Alright. Thank you, John. Okay, item 13, special election warrant. I think we can skip this.
No, this would be to approve the special election warrant as prepared by the town clerk. Oh, I'm sorry, it says special, it should say state election, sorry.
Okay.
State election, yes, sorry, excuse me, that would be the confusion. The state election warrant for September,
State election
September first.
Alright.
So move to approve the state election warrant dated Tuesday, September 1st, 2026.
Motion made,
Second.
motion seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
And me, yes. Alright, discussion approval of boards and committees. I think we'll take these one by one.
So, anything to discuss before, move to approve the bicycle advisory committee. Oh wait, sorry, we haven't discussed the composition and charge, right? Are we ready to vote on this for bicycle committee?
I believe so, this is only 3.5, but looking at the charge.
We'll just give it a minute and then I'll give the motion so people can read it.
We can just make that 7. Last of it. Means it's spelled.
We have no existing bicycle advisory committee members at present, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We did receive an application in the last day or two for somebody who had served on it previously.
Okay.
But I don't believe any of the applicants are past members of the 3 that are on the agenda.
Okay. So we're approving the charge first and then the 3 members, the 3, yeah, okay.
I'll take a motion, let's start the questions.
Any questions? Do you want me to break this up? Alright. Move to approve the bicycle advisory committee charge.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Move to approve the Bicycle Advisory Committee, move to appoint the following individuals for one-year terms. Echo Berquist, Richard Bork, and Shelley Wolf.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yep, I'm
Megan?
sorry. Yep.
Oh, Megan's down.
I think it's-
And myself, yes.
First time, I think.
Great.
You and I echo.
Yeah.
Thanks for-
Sorry.
Thanks for doing the charge, Nick, and thanks for those members to, get this relaunched.
And we will have 2 more applicants on the next meeting to receive 2 more applications over the weekend.
Okay. Looks like John Driscoll has his hand raised.
John, you got your hand raised?
No, I did that by mistake.
All right. All right, so for the Conservation Commission appointment, we are only appointing one. So we will need to select one of the 3 candidates. Is there anyone that members would like to put forth and make the arguments for support?
While we get organized on that, I just wanted to thank Dr. Ingrid Beatty for 19 years of service on this committee, which created this vacancy.
Thank you, Dr. Beatty. Any preference of candidates? Go ahead, John.
I'd like to put forward George Lee. Been worked very hard for the Fletcher Steel Garden. She's been on the Women's Club Flowers. She's a very nice lady. And I really support her in this role.
Lots of questions from members?
I mean, this is a competitive set of applicants here, impressive group, and I hope that, we can find places on positions for all 3 of them, because this is a tough one. I was respectfully going to nominate and advocate for another candidate. Procedurally, do we discuss John's motion first, or do we discuss this all at once?
Mr. Milano?
It doesn't matter, I'll just, I think that, they all very strong. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but I thought Mary Rife showed, what jumped out at me among 3 very qualified candidates was what, from the application, sort of a unique interest in this particular committee, including sort of, meeting with prior members to, make sure it was the right committee to sign up for, and, that just was the one differentiating factor, I thought, between the 3 applications. So that would be my vote.
So, Mr. Milano, on guidance here, with 2 candidates put forth, what is the best way for us to proceed?
Yes. Procedural reference, I apologize to the board.
You probably just have to do one by one.
Seeking a second for Mr. Driscoll's nomination first.
Second.
Second in Mr. Driscoll's nomination, and then we need a second for second candidate as well.
I would say deal with the motion on the floor, which is to appoint George.
Okay.
It's a motion that's been made and seconded to that.
Motion's been made and seconded to appoint Georgia Lee Sheridan, Georgia Lee, just Georgia Lee. And we'll take it to a vote. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Just because I was offering the other candidate, so I'll go, no for this.
Yes. No.
And for myself, I I will say yes, because Ms. Lee has applied, I think, a couple of times for this, commission. So that would put us at 3-2. Do we then move forward with the second candidate?
The motion is to carry.
Motion is carried. So George Lee will be appointed.
That's great, you know, I mean, they all seem very strong, so.
And I will, I think we'll reach out to both Mary and Tom and see if Tom had expressed interest in several committees, and Pete and I had spoken about that, we checked out traffic, so we'll reach out to him and to Mary, see if there's anything else that we can apply to towns to.
Okay, thank you. We will move to the next.
These are reappointments for the capital Improvement Planning Committee.
Take a motion.
Move to appoint the list as written to the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term.
Capital improvement.
Do they, right?
Sorry.
Capital.
Capital.
What happened to,
We just did that.
We did conservation, it's only one. I think it's a slow typo.
oh, I see, I got you. I see, I'm just not, I'm tired.
Good. We're almost
Move
there.
to reappoint the following individuals to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee for a 1-year term as written.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Okay, move to Fire Station Building Committee.
We historically had a select board liaison to the Fire Station Building Committee. Should have flagged this in the spring, apologize for that, but the board does not have to appoint a liaison, but could, and ask that member to attend the Fire Station Building Committees and obviously back from that.
Are there any members that would like to volunteer?
What's the runway on that committee? So it will be through what, through the completion of the project?
Correct. They've been meeting monthly. They pretty much stick to a monthly schedule. They will meet monthly until Atherton is built and closed out. So that committee will last probably another 2.5 to 3 years. And then right now they have a working group planned around just some of the Atherton issues that might meet more often than the full committee, but the full committee meets monthly with additional meetings on a case by case basis.
John, I see your hand up.
Pete wants this, he can have it, but if he doesn't want it, I'll take it.
I was interested, but John, you should take it. I've got some busy committees on my plate, so by all means, John, thank you. So I guess, absent further discussion, I'll nominate John.
All right, motion
Just-
made. Give me a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. We'll do without Mr. Driscoll, all right, Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
And myself, yes. John, congratulations.
Thank you.
We move to the Affordable Housing Trust. I'll take a motion.
Move to appoint Levita Johnson to the trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust for a 1-year term.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Congratulations, Ms. Johnson. Our next is the Milton Housing Authority. This is also, we are to select one of the candidates. I would like to put forth Mary Kirby. Reason being, Ms. Kirby lives at the Miller Ave residence, which I believe Mr. Driscoll spoke of, getting some funding recently. And I know there's going to be some work done at that address, and I think a resident there would be a great value add to the Affordable Housing Trust. So I will put Ms. Mary Kirby forward for the appointment. And some
Second.
others. Motion made, seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
And myself, yes. All right, is that all right, item 16. Discussion approval of our election officer appointments. Anything you'd like to share, Mr.
Oh,
Moore?
sorry, Mr. Chair, sorry.
We gotta wrap this
The
up.
the select board makes, makes regular appointments, confirming the election officers, the wardens and clerks, and all of the other poll workers who do yeoman's works in managing and running and, working all the elections. So we appreciate their efforts, and I'm sure, the town clerk could use more bodies. If anybody else is interested, but this would be to appoint all of those individuals that she's identified as, proposed election workers.
All of our very hard-working election officers. I'll take a motion.
Move to appoint and reappoint the election officers maintained by the town clerk and on file in the town clerk's office.
Motion made.
Second.
Made and seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Item 17, discussion approval of one-day liquor licenses. Who would like to read those?
Move to approve the one-day liquor license to the Milton Chamber of Commerce, Milton Arts Center, Vance Welsh.
Sorry, I'm gonna cut you off, Megan, because I just wanted everyone to see.
Oh, sorry.
If you wanna walk us through this kind of a site map, like this one. This is in addition to, everyone remembers the town meeting discussion about the, beer garden sort of setup. That was asked, I believe those are identified.
I don't know if I printed the right one, is it marked out there? Maybe not, so we'll pass this one around.
Alright.
So, if members will recall, last year there was debate over adding,
This is the same.
oh, it is, okay, good. So, there were a couple versions, so I apologize for confusion. Town meeting voted to change the town's bylaws to allow for alcohol on town land with a number of requirements. The applicants have said and have stated that, they're working to complete all the requirements, they're aware of them related to insurance, to prepare certificates of insurance that meet those levels. They'll either use a beer garden, or not, so they'll set up a dedicated space for, alcohol service, or they would be open to not having like a more limited space and allowing it throughout the deck, but they're open to whatever the select board's preferences are on that. The bylaw does allow the select board to demarcate a specific area where alcohol service would be allowed, and they're prepared to meet the other requirements again, like I said, related to insurance, related to tip certified servers, related to wristbands, and the like. So the two questions are, big picture, does the select board want to issue an alcohol license for this event, the back to business event for the chamber in East Milton at the deck? And if yes, what do you want to set as the location where alcohol service and consumption would be allowed?
Can I ask a quick question? I feel like I remember when we were discussing this bylaw at the town meeting, that we weren't gonna assign the select board the role of, like, specifically, like, we weren't going to be drawing on maps, because we're not necessarily like the experts in setting boundaries for consuming alcohol. Did I not remember that correctly? I could have misremembered that,
It
but
specifically says ultimately it's up to the board to decide. They submitted a proposed location,
yeah.
but said
Which
we
one of
would-
the locations on this map is the proposed location?
the restricted access beer garden that's in dotted lines on the lower left-hand side.
So we have the police department and the fire department and whoever else is qualified to comment on this, comment on it, sorry.
Not on the specific location in this case in terms of
Yeah.
having restricted or not. There have been previous events, where obviously prior one-day licenses before they're fully issued, the chief will sign off on, but in this case, it was the first, so we were really, I was thinking the board might have a strong preference, so I was seeking your input first, because generally, they're kind of up in the air. Because, for example, you could limit it to the green, or you could limit it to within the parameters of the park, or you could use what they proposed as their restricted beer garden location.
So it would be, so we have the ability to say either the space is bigger, the space is larger, or we can move the area. But beer garden, going with the bylaw that we just put in, beer garden exists.
Yeah.
The wristbands are there, the alcohol sales and area of consumption are restricted. So unless we have, to me, unless we have a really strong feeling about where it should be.
I wanna know if Chief King has a strong opinion of
Okay.
where it should be.
No, sorry, I went in the reverse order.
Okay,
So-
alright.
That's fine.
So I think what we can do is we can inform the applicants that generally the board is comfortable with this, and, however, is gonna seek input from the chief and others in terms of a specific location.
All of the public safety units.
And we can tee that up for the select board meeting on September first, prior to that. Okay.
I don't know if anyone else feels the same way,
think-
I realized I had a
think-
strong opinion about it.
Yeah, it's a good process. It's not, it's a good process to start. It goes through the others first.
Okay, that's
Thank
fine,
you.
yeah, just with our first restriction, thank you.
But we can still approve it?
I would hold it, we'll tell them
Okay.
where there's we don't expect to not allow it, but we're gonna pull some additional details together and we'll let them know August 31st.
Okay.
Saves and welfare of the town, I'm not trying, yeah, we should.
Well, that's good, so it's a very good. So we move to the second question.
Yep, we can move on to that.
Move to the next one, Nate.
Move to approve the one-day liquor license to James Southfield of Break Rock Brewing of 534 Victory Road, Quincy, for the White Pine Vintage Market on October 17th, 2026, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Governor Hutchinson Field.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
And me, yes. All right, moving to item 18, discussion approval of the meeting minutes, July 14th, 2026 and July 21st, 2026.
I would like to move to approve the amended meeting minutes for July 14th, 2026 and July 21st, 2026.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
And myself, yes. And we're on to number 19, the town administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just do quickly two parks updates first. Beverly Park on Sumner Street is coming together. All the playground equipment is fully installed and preparing to install the new rubber surface. So that project is coming on quickly there. And then in terms of the Lower Guile turf fields, appeals on that project were due Mass DEP's approval of the project by the end of the day yesterday. And as far as we can tell through the court docket, no appeal has been filed. We have not been served with an appeal. We have not found an appeal filed in court. So that project is able to proceed under the prior approval from the Milton Conservation Commission and Mass DEP. So it's been long delayed for several years, but we'll be working with the landscape architect to tee up that project and start thinking about a construction schedule that makes sense, likely sometime next spring.
It's good news on Guile.
Yep.
It's, this will be in future agenda items, but we should expect to speak with Parks. I know they have their master plan that we need to learn more about, but also with Parks for how we move forward with this project 4 years later. All right. John, you have your hands raised?
Yes. For Megan's report.
No, not yet. I thought you put your hand up for the Parks for Nick's report.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'll go quickly through the chair's report. Not much here, and it's already late. I would just like to congratulate JD and Dan Kerrigan in the opening of 2 Pence. If you have not been, you should. It's a great little market, and I think it will become even better over time. Anytime I've been in there, it's been packed, so traffic has been great. With the discussion we've had today about Milton Village and also the creation of new businesses and new amenities and new resources for our residents, it is a great place to visit and a great place to finally have open. So congratulations to you. Members' reports, anyone? John?
Yes, thank you. I want to apologize if I happen to leave, but thank you for letting me. I just wanted the town people to know, and I'm a culprit of this. I was on the capital committee, a year ago. We voted for a generator for the library. About 4 weeks ago, I found out the generator's going in front of the library. They're going in front of the building, and to this day, it's still got me infuriated that I even voted for this. But I'm a culprit of this. If I only knew that it was gonna go in front of the building, I would have voted no. Then the library's on the hospital neighborhood, and they don't let the hospital stay out of electricity very long. So this generator's costing $380,000 and it's going in front of the building. When you come down the driveway, it's right there. They need the transformer. But they didn't wanna spend another 280 to put it behind the building, off to the side for the piping. And this is a scenic roadway. It's a scenic roadway, and I don't think the generator should be in front of this building. Well, I just wanna bring that to all the townspeople's attention, that that's coming to the front of that building. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Other members?
That's for me.
All right, public comment response. We've shared a little bit from Mrs. Felton's view on short-term rentals. I think we've had an update there, that we'll continue to work on that to get it ready for spring. For the 138 and MassDOT relationship, I think that is more to come. We have been in communication with MassDOT, perhaps we've not been as specific about researching the overflow to 138 and Kent Ave, but that is something that we will raise for them.
Can we talk, just one or two comments on that? First, I think Nick's been doing a great job to try to convey to Mass DOT the views and the information provided from Mr. Corey and other Canton Ave residents. The part about the comments that I'm, beyond that caught my attention is there anything the select board can do to be helpful there? Because it does seem to me like, you know, if we're gonna secure any kind of help from Mass DOT there, like, strike while the iron's hot, you know, in the wake of their presentation in May. So either now or soon, you know, I'd be interested in, like, you know, so his suggestion was invite them back. I don't know what the right sort of move could be there to kind of show our interest. I'm sure you're conveying that, whether it's like, could one of us like join a call just to like reinforce the views or something like that. But, you know, I'm open to try to make the most of this, you know, post window right here, which, you know, I think if it's 2 years after, probably don't have a lot of momentum with them.
We can reach out to the team again. They've obviously been very responsive and helpful throughout this process. And this kind of outstanding item, I can reach out and say something was, you know, asking me for me to deliver at the next meeting and get a response that way and report back. And if that doesn't get a response to what it's looking for, then maybe we can take that next step as a reference and as John mentioned.
Okay.
And I don't think that they have good data on the Upper Canton piece, right? It's all from, I don't know what it's called now, but not in the Upper Canton piece. And you know, right? They measured from Unquity,
Yes.
right? They
correct.
measured from Unquity, but I don't think they captured. I'd like to see them capture that. As right, we live there. You know, we hear Mr. Corey's point about there's a lot more traffic there. What is the data?
Yeah, and we are doing some homework to try to pull any counts and data that we have, but everything that we have is all calculated from like 2018. So it's pretty old at this point, but we were pulling that to share as well. So I can follow up on that and, as I mentioned, just reach out with the request request to find out if it's something we're gonna ask for.
Are any new counts our purviews versus Mass Stop if they're being removed?
Yes, we, the town can't have, yes, can't not 138 yet. If we're talking about Canton, yes, that would be our street, that we could grab cones on, that with our internal equipment. The challenge being that would be the present condition, we just don't, we missed the opportunity to do it yet. But we could at least see what the road is carrying in terms of capacity and volume and speed.
You said you had 2018 counts, right?
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't capture like that's like pre-COVID, but we're also kinda, I think, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but I think the 2018 counts might be.
And those are from Malton Woods, so that was more on that stretch.
It gives us something to compare to, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, we're probably cutting out 3 years of COVID anyway.
Someone may, argue, but it's also like we're back to like worse than COVID statewide, so.
Okay, future meeting schedule, we've just added September 1st. August 31st, jeez. That's right, August 31st. August 31st, September 8th, and still September 22nd. Right? All right, future agenda items, anyone? With that, I will move to enter executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, Library College, 303 Adams Street. Based on my belief that the discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the select board. The select board will return to open session. I also move to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, Milton Clerical Unit of the Southeastern Public Employees Association, Milton Professional Management Association, Milton Public Employee Association, Milton Firefighters Local 1116, Milton Police Association, Milton Superior Officers, Milton Library Association. Based on my belief the discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the select board, the select board will not return to open session.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Myself, yes. And I will take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. John?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Myself, yes. All right.